Chapter 1753. The floating mountain peak, the vast sea, and on the mountain peak, the figures were all dragon slayers. Not only did Tang Zheng see it, the Dragon King and the rest of the dragon clan also saw it. It was true that when enemies met, their eyes would turn red, as if they were about to burst into flames. The hatred from their lives burst out from the bottom of the dragon's heart like a volcanic eruption. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud booms erupted from the bottom of the sea as pillars of water rose into the air. The pillars of water completely surrounded the dragon race and rushed toward the spatial gate from all directions. The dragon slayers had also discovered the dragon's intentions, so they had to stop the endless flow of dragons coming here. The only way was to destroy the spatial gate. We can't keep being so passive. You guys protect the spatial gate. I'll go meet the dragon slayers and make them stop attacking. Tang Zheng volunteered. He waved the hidden mystic sword, and with a whoosh, he turned into a ray of light and rushed out. As for the water pillars in front, how could they stop him and the hidden mystic sword? With a flash of sword light, the water pillars shattered. Tang Zheng rushed toward the dragon slayers in the distance with an unparalleled aura. Although the two sides were far apart, to Tang Zheng, the horizon was just a short distance away. Close. He finally saw the dragon slayers clearly. They were also a group of people, but their auras were completely different. Some of them even emitted dragon's might. This was the effect after devouring the dragon's soul. The eyes of the dragon slayers locked onto Tang Zheng, and they laughed sinisterly. Another dragon that's here to die. That's right, they actually dare to come here to die instead of hiding. Then we'll fulfill their wish. Who's going to meet him first and eat this appetizer before the big meal? Obviously, the dragon slayers were overbearing and didn't take Tang Zheng seriously at all. I'll go. One of the dragon slayers stood out reluctantly, as if he didn't think highly of Tang Zheng and felt that it was too embarrassing to take action. Ha ha ha, you're the only one among us. After all, you've only devoured one dragon's soul, so you're the weakest among us. This time, you'll be able to devour a second dragon's soul soon. The other dragon slayers laughed loudly. The dragon slayer's eyes were filled with hatred as he glared at the approaching Tang Zheng. Quickly accept your death. He took the lead and rushed out to meet Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng remained unmoved. He took in the dragon slayer's various expressions. With a cold smile, he quickly slashed out with his sword. Whoosh! The hidden mystic sword flew out and tore through the sky. The dragon slayer on the other side hurriedly activated his magical weapon in an attempt to block it. Boom! The hidden profound sword struck the dragon slayer, and with a flash of sword light, the dragon slayer disappeared from this world before he could even react. However, the attack of the hidden sword of Xianzong did not stop, and it affected the nearby dragon slayers. The dragon slayer didn't seem to have expected this result. He shrieked in alarm while activating his magic weapon to resist. Boom! Boom! After a series of loud noises, the few dragon slayers disappeared into thin air. The few dragon slayers were wounded and retreated in a sorry state. This series of unforeseen events shocked the other dragon slayers. Pairs of eyes were wide open as they looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Why was this dragon race so powerful? They had never met such a powerful dragon race before. They wanted to devour the other party's dragon soul, but their teeth were knocked out. Tang Zheng stood in the air, glaring at them. The dragon slayer's messy team calmed down and stared at Tang Zheng. One side had a lot of people, while the other side was weak, but their aura was not weak at all. You are the Dragon King? A dragon slayer asked. After seeing Tang Zheng's strength, they mistook him for the Dragon King. Otherwise, how could a normal dragon race have such a strong force? I am not the Dragon King, but the Dragon God Envoy. Dragon God Envoy? The dragon slayers looked at each other. They had never heard of this title. They only knew that there were Dragon Kings and Dragon Envoys in the dragon race. When did the Dragon God Envoy appear? From the corner of his eyes, Tang Zheng saw that the water column was still rising from the sea, trying to destroy the spatial door. Therefore, he did not continue to talk nonsense with the dragon slayers. He held the Xuanzang sword and shouted, "Dragon slayers, we will return all the humiliation you have brought to the dragon race in the past. Kill." The earth-shattering battle cry was full of momentum. Tang Zheng's figure flashed, and he was already in front of the dragon slayers. The dragon slayers hurriedly dealt with it, but Tang Zheng's cultivation was much higher than the average dragon slayers. In almost the blink of an eye, a few more dragon slayers died under the Xuanzang sword. Stop him. The dragon slayers were shocked. They did not expect Tang Zheng to be so strong. Tang Zheng became braver as he fought, and the dragon slayers were defeated. Tang Zheng could not help but be surprised. These dragon slayers were not strong. Although he was a 9th-grade Mahayana realm cultivator, the Dragon King was not weak either. Why had the dragon race been suppressed all these years and been in an absolute disadvantage? The dragon slayers seemed to be much weaker than he expected. Roar. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a deafening roar was heard. A giant flew over from afar, holding a mountain in his hand. Go! With a shout, the mountain in his hand flew out, crashing straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed. Without a doubt, this dragon slayer's cultivation was higher than the other dragon slayers. Seeing the mountain flying over, the Xuanzang sword hurriedly slashed out at lightning speed. Clang! A deafening sound of metal and stone colliding was heard. It was as if thunder had fallen from the 9 heavens. A shockwave swept in all directions. The other dragon slayers were thrown off their feet. Only Tang Zheng and the giant were unmoved. As for the mountain, it was not destroyed and was still intact. This. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He stared at the mountain in disbelief. In the next moment, he saw the clue. This was not just a mountain, but a treasure. Because it was glowing with a faint cyan light, and a heavy feeling hit him in the face. This dragon slayer is not simple. Tang Zheng made a judgment, and his face became serious. The giant was about 10 meters tall. He stared at Tang Zheng condescendingly. His voice was so hoarse that it seemed to be squeezed out from a crack in the stone. Dragon God Envoy. I will use the flying mountain to crush you into a meat patty. As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed the flying mountain. The tall mountain was as light as a feather in his hand, and he ruthlessly smashed it at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng raised his thick eyebrows and shouted, "Break!" Holding the Xuanzang sword, he stabbed forward, bringing with it an unparalleled sword qi that soared into the sky. Bang! The sword and the mountain clashed, and a dazzling light spread out, enveloping Tang Zheng and the giant in the light. This light became more and more dazzling, causing others to be unable to open their eyes. This light also had a huge power. Once touched, they would immediately be seriously injured and sent flying. Immediately, the dragon slayers were afraid that it was too late. They retreated in all directions, but every dragon slayer revealed an excited expression. The Overlord has attacked. This dragon god envoy is dead for sure. That's right. This dragon god envoy is so powerful, his dragon soul must be very delicious. Once swallowed, his cultivation will definitely skyrocket. The dragon slayers discussed spiritedly, as if they unanimously believed that Tang Zheng was dead for sure. Obviously, this overlord had an extremely powerful strength and prestige in the hearts of the dragon slayers. After a while, the light gradually dissipated. The overlord's tall figure appeared again. The dragon slayers cheered loudly. Author's digression. These few days I have stopped updating, but today I am starting to update again. My mood is extremely low. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1754. When the Overlord appeared, the dragon slayers cheered, thinking that Tang Zheng would definitely lose. Boom! Suddenly, the Overlord exploded, turning into a rain of blood that fell onto the sea. The flying peak was also split into two, and its divine power disappeared. It was like two pieces of scrap iron that fell into the sea, splashing up huge waves. The dragon slayers seemed to be strangled, and their cheers stopped abruptly. They looked at this scene dumbfoundedly. The light completely dissipated, and Tang Zheng's figure appeared again, standing still. The hidden mysterious sword floated beside him, emitting a dazzling light. His gaze swept across and fell on the other dragon slayers. Immediately, the dragon slayers retreated as if they were struck by lightning. Ha ha ha! Tang Zheng laughed wildly and shouted, "Who dares to fight again?" The more he fought, the more valiant he became, and no one dared to look at him directly. Dragon God Envoy! Dragon God Envoy! When the dragons saw this scene, they all raised their arms and cheered, their minds agitated. The dragons' morale rose greatly, and their originally nervous thoughts disappeared. Each of them was full of fighting spirit, and couldn't wait to fight with the dragon slayers in close combat. Tang Jing successfully bought time for the dragons, and when the last dragon passed through the spatial door, it closed with a bang. The dragon army stretched out, almost occupying half of the sky. The dragon slayers looked at the dragons with blazing eyes, but they didn't act rashly. In the past, they saw the dragons as prey, but now, facing the dragon army, they didn't dare to underestimate them. The dragons hadn't shown off their muscles in front of the dragon slayers for many years, and this caused the dragon slayers to have the inherent idea that the dragons were weak and could be hunted by them. But at this moment, looking at the dragon army, which dragon slayers dared to say that they could do whatever they wanted? The Dragon King led the dragon army and flew over, standing together with Tang Zheng, facing the dragon slayers. The Dragon King had mixed feelings. After so many years, this day had finally come. If it wasn't for Tang Zheng, this day would have been delayed for many years. He took a deep look at Tang Zheng, unable to conceal the gratitude and excitement in his eyes. The Dragon King's eyes turned cold as he swept an overbearing glance at the dragon slayers. His voice was as loud as a bell as he said, "Dragon slayers, you have hunted the dragon clan for so many years. Today, we will fight you to the death to end this matter. Today, I will make all of you pay back the debt you owe the dragon clan. Give it back. Give it back." The dragon clan let out an earth-shattering roar that reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Even the surface of the sea exploded with pillars of water. Lowly dragon clan, what qualifications do you have to speak such big words? You even dared to come here and throw away your lives. Today, I'll make sure that you won't be able to return. I'll make sure that your clan completely disappears from this world. A dragon slayer retorted fearlessly. His voice was like a clap of thunder. The Dragon King immediately locked onto this person. He grabbed with his hand and a dragon claw appeared. A golden energy immediately enveloped this person. The dragon slayer screamed and struggled with all his might. However, with a boom, this dragon slayer exploded into pieces. Dragon King! Dragon King! The dragon clan raised their arms and shouted. It was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. The crowd was agitated. The dragon slayer's aura was obviously much weaker. Tang Zheng frowned. Where was the true strength of the dragon slayer? Although many of the dragon slayers on the opposite side were in the Mahayana realm, there were no top experts like the 9th stage of the Mahayana realm. In comparison, the dragon slayers were naturally at a disadvantage and were slightly inferior. There must be something fishy, Tang Zheng concluded. The Dragon King was not stupid. He immediately frowned. When he did not see the figure he wanted to see in the crowd, he shouted, "Where's your leader? Where's that traitor of the dragon clan? Who was the leader of the dragon slayers?" This was self-evident. The leader was the traitor of the dragon clan. He was the brother of the dragon god back then. He was the one who established the dragon slayers and expelled the dragon clan from their homeland. Now, every clansman who knew the history of the dragon clan hated this traitor to the core. You can't meet the leader just because you want to. The dragon slayer retorted hesitantly. If the traitor doesn't come out, aren't you afraid that I'll kill all of your subordinates? The Dragon King asked. Kill us? That depends on whether or not you have the strength to do so. Your dragon clan is born to be hunted and killed. You still want to resist? Keep dreaming. The dragon slayer said generously. The Dragon King was too lazy to talk nonsense with the other party. He waved his hand and ordered, "Dragon clan, kill, kill." The shouts were deafening and spread all over the wilderness. An overwhelming dragon aura condensed and surged. One by one, the dragons flew towards the dragon slayers. This dragon aura was like a tornado that rose from the ground and swept towards the dragon slayers. Kill. The dragon slayers were not to be outdone. They took out their magic treasures and faced the dragon clan army. Boom. A loud sound rang out between heaven and earth. The Dragon Clan and the Dragon Slayers clashed. All kinds of magic treasures flew in the sky. Their auras surged and shook people's hearts. One of the Dragon Slayers rushed towards the Dragon King. The Dragon King reached out and grabbed with his dragon claw. The other party suddenly froze. His expression became miserable and he died on the spot. The Dragon Slayers had seen how powerful Tang Zheng was. Unexpectedly, none of them dared to rush towards Tang Zheng directly. Therefore, although Tang Zheng was powerful, he was facing a situation where he had no opponents. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he watched a Dragon Slayer rush towards the Empyrean Fairy. He seemed to think that the Empyrean Fairy was easier to bully. Hua! The Wuji umbrella flew out from her hand. The umbrella opened up and rays of light flew out, immediately entangling the Dragon Slayer. The Dragon Slayer struggled with all his might. However, the Wuji umbrella was a sacred weapon and it was in the hands of the Empyrean Fairy. The Dragon Slayer couldn't break free at all. Boom! The rays of light pierced through the Dragon Slayer's chest and he died on the spot. In this battle, the Dragon Clan won a good start. Their morale was greatly boosted and they became braver as they fought. The Dragon King didn't seem to want to lose to Tang Zheng. Everyone had seen his heroic actions just now. Therefore, the Dragon King also used all his skills. His combat strength was off the charts. One by one, the Dragon Slayers died in his hands. The Dragon Slayers were very tenacious. Although many of them died, they didn't retreat a single step. Similarly, the Dragon Clan also suffered many casualties. However, they didn't retreat either. On the sea, many corpses of the Dragon Clan and the Dragon Slayers were floating. The Dragon Clan's bodies were huge. They were like small paths floating on the sea and were especially eye-catching. Unknowingly, the sea turned from blue to light red. Finally, it turned blood red. This battle was too intense and cruel. The smell of blood wafted and filled the air. However, both sides still didn't stop. Both sides were mortal enemies. It was either you die or I die. They wouldn't stop until the last person was killed. Seeing this tragic scene, Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. There were thousands of thoughts in his mind, but he couldn't say a single word. Although the Dragon Slayers weren't as powerful as he imagined, he couldn't care so much now. It wouldn't be too late to kill these Dragon Slayers first. The Dragon Clan's humiliation must be washed away with blood. Kill! Tang Zheng also roared. With the hidden mystic sword in his hand, he joined in the fierce battle. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1755. This unprecedented battle was still going on, fresh blood and treasures flew everywhere, it was extremely dangerous. The Dragon Slayer finally couldn't resist and retreated in defeat. The morale of the Dragon Clan was greatly boosted, their attacks became more ferocious, everywhere they passed, the Dragon Slayer fell to the ground one after another. However, Tang Zheng's heart gradually sank, especially when he saw that the Dragon Clan's advantage was increasing. His heart seemed to have sunk into a bottomless abyss. Something's wrong. The Dragon King also flew to his side and shouted in unison, "Something's wrong." The Dragon King understood the Dragon Slayer better, he wasn't blinded by the temporary victory. It was impossible for the Dragon Slayer to only have this little strength, other than that overlord from before, there were no other top-notch Dragon Slayers. This was simply impossible. How could the Dragon Slayer only have this little strength? If that was the case, why would the Dragon Clan be suppressed and chased for so many years? Tang Zheng and the Dragon King looked at each other and saw the deep anxiety in each other's eyes. Dragon King, we have to figure out what's going on. Tang Zheng took the lead and said. The Dragon King nodded and said, I'll go catch one alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the Dragon King waved his hand, a golden dragon claw fell from the sky. A Dragon Slayer was unlucky. He was firmly caught in the palm of the hand. Let go of me. The Dragon Slayer kept struggling, but everything was in vain. Let me ask you, where's your leader? The Dragon King widened his eyes and asked majestically. You want to pry open my mouth? Dream on. The Dragon Slayer said in disdain. You're not going to talk, right? I have a way to make you talk. The Dragon King shouted and retracted his dragon claw. Ah! The Dragon Slayer screamed at the top of his lungs, but he still didn't open his mouth. The Dragon King frowned, but there was nothing he could do. The Dragon Slayer was about to be crushed to death by the dragon claw. Let me do it. Tang Zheng stretched out his hand and clasped 5 fingers on the Dragon Slayer's head. The Dragon King looked at him suspiciously. Even he couldn't do anything. What brilliant plan could he have? Tang Zheng used the soul-searching technique. The Dragon Slayer immediately stopped screaming and turned into a piece of wood. After Tang Zheng released his hand, the Dragon King hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with him?" "How are we going to ask now?" "There's no need to ask." Tang Zheng's expression was solemn as he said in a deep voice, "We didn't guess wrong. The Dragon Slayers already had a plan." The Dragon King didn't care how Tang Zheng got the news. He quickly asked, "What's the plan?" "These Dragon Slayers are just a smokescreen. The real army of Dragon Slayers is not here. They have other plans." "What do you want?" The Dragon King was shocked. "Lang Yji," Tang Zheng said word by word. "What?" The Dragon King exclaimed in shock. "Are they going for the Langya Pavilion?" "That's right. They've already deciphered the secret of the Dragon Seal world, and are going all out to prepare for the invasion of the Langya Pavilion." Tang Zheng was also shocked by this news. He secretly exclaimed that the Dragon Slayer was cunning. Not only are there dragon god fragments in Langya Pavilion, but there are also countless dragon souls. These are the targets of the Dragon Slayers. Once they succeed, we won't be able to stop the Dragon Slayers. The Dragon King flew into a rage and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go find that traitor now and stop their actions. Follow me." Tang Zheng roared and dived towards the surface of the sea. The surface of the sea was already dyed red with blood, turning into a sea of blood. Whoosh! He was like a meteorite as he rushed towards the surface of the sea. When he was about to reach the surface of the sea, he waved his hand and an invisible force split the sea into 2. A bottomless chasm appeared in front of them. The sea water gathered from all directions, forming a tall waterfall. The sea water fell down with a splash, raising a mist that filled the sky. However, the mist had turned blood red, emitting a thick smell of blood. The Dragon King followed behind Tang Zheng and dived down together. Seeing this, the Empyrean fairy was not willing to fall behind. She swept the limitless umbrella and the light blasted a Dragon Slayer back. Whoosh! Her figure flashed as she chased after them. The 3 of them rushed into the bottomless chasm. Seeing this, the Dragon Slayers immediately saw through their intentions and shouted, "Stop them!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh! One by one, the Dharma treasures flew towards them. However, Tang Zheng waved his hand, and a black hole appeared out of thin air. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! After a few gusts of wind, all the Dharma treasures were absorbed by the black hole. The Dragon Slayers did not give up. They also chased after them and attacked them without caring about their own safety. They knew that their cultivation was not as good as Tang Zheng's, but they still pressed forward. "You're courting death." The Dragon King frowned coldly. The huge dragon god appeared, and the dragon's aura swept across. Bang bang bang! A few Dragon Slayers were hit in the waist and were cut in half, falling into the sea. Tang Zheng did not pay attention to the pursuers as he was completely focused on the front. The bottom of the sea was unfathomably deep and dark. A ball of fire rose into the sky, illuminating the path ahead. Even though the air was filled with a thick and humid aura, it did not extinguish the fire. They did not know how deep they had dived. When they looked back, the sea had closed again, and they could not see the sky outside at all. Suddenly, a bright light came from below. They were shocked. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they stared ahead. Was this the end? The Dragon King looked around and came to a realization. This is the former Dragon Palace. The ancient home of the Dragon Clan had long been occupied by the Dragon Slayers. Even the underwater Dragon Palace was no exception. With a splash, the last bit of seawater split in half, and the Dragon Palace finally appeared in front of them. This Dragon Palace occupied a larger area than the new Dragon Palace in the Dragon Domain. It was more majestic, and one could not see the end of it. The 3 of them were about to enter the Dragon Palace when an invisible force spread out. Boom! The 3 of them were sent flying by this force. A light screen surrounded and protected the Dragon Palace, not allowing outsiders to step in. "This is the Dragon Palace of the Dragon Clan. How can you not let me in? Watch how I break your restriction." The Dragon King roared. He swung his dragon tail and hit the light screen hard. Crack! A crack appeared and spread rapidly. Bang bang bang! The dragon tail swept a few more times. Finally, the light screen could not hold on any longer. With a clang, it shattered. "HMPH, you still want to stop me?" the Dragon King said proudly. He took the lead and rushed into the Dragon Palace. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy followed closely behind. They looked around. The Dragon Palace was quiet. Other than them, there was no other sound. "Where is the traitor hiding?" the Dragon King asked Tang Zheng. "This way." Tang Zheng led the way as if he was more familiar with the place than the Dragon King. The Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy followed behind and ran into the depths of the Dragon Palace. Everywhere they passed by, there was nothing. They did not even see the shadow of a dragon slayer. However, the more it was so, the more uncertain the two of them were. They knew that the situation would be worse. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the front. The three of them stopped and looked up. The central area of the Dragon Palace had collapsed and turned into ruins. The buildings had disappeared, leaving only a dark hole. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1756. The Dragon Palace had collapsed and was in ruins. It was a scene of devastation. That black hole was like a huge mouth that could devour people, as if it could suck them in. The three of them were shocked. Shortly after, the Dragon King flew into a rage. This was the former home of the Dragon Clan, but now it was destroyed. As the Dragon King, how could he not be angry? "Traitor, Dragon Slayer, come out!" He roared towards the sky, and the dragon seal resounded throughout the Dragon Palace. However, what answered him was silence. Tang Zheng soared into the sky, his eyes flashing. The mysterious concealed sword danced in his hand as he roared, "Go!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Rays of sword light shot out in all directions, covering the huge Dragon Palace. Every time it reached a certain place, the sword light was invincible and nothing could stop it. Boom boom boom. A series of loud sounds rang out as many Dragon Palace buildings were destroyed by the mysterious concealed sword. The Dragon King opened his eyes wide in anger, staring at Tang Zheng like a tiger eyeing its prey, and roared, "What are you doing?" Tang Zheng landed on the ground with an indifferent expression and said, "I'm verifying my guess." "What guess?" the Dragon King asked suspiciously. "The Dragon Slayer is no longer in the Dragon Palace." "What?" The Dragon King turned pale with fright. They did not encounter many Dragon Slayers, which meant that there were many Dragon Slayers hidden in the Dragon Palace. But now that these Dragon Slayers were not in the Dragon Palace, where could they be? The answer was self-evident. The Dragon King's face turned gloomy and solemn. His breathing quickened as he stared at Tang Zheng and asked in disbelief, "You mean?" Before he could finish, Tang Zheng's face also turned solemn. As if they had a tacit understanding, he nodded heavily and spat out 3 words in unison with the Dragon King, "Langya Pavilion." Hiss. When he said this, the three of them sucked in a breath of cold air. The result they did not want to see the most had happened. They took the initiative to attack in order to prevent the Dragon Slayers from finding a way to enter the Dragon Seal world. From the looks of it, they were still one step too late. They had already found a way, and at the most crucial moment, they had sent out a small portion of the Dragon Slayers to stop them, while the majority of the Dragon Slayers secretly went to the Dragon Seal world and went straight to the Langya Pavilion. The purpose of the Dragon Slayers could not be any clearer. They coveted the Dragon Soul and Dragon God fragments in the Langya Pavilion. "Let's go to Langya Pavilion," Tang Zheng and the Dragon King said in unison. They had already realized the seriousness of the matter. It was now a matter of life and death. They had still underestimated the Dragon Slayers. Their determination to stake everything on a single throw was terrifying. They abandoned a small portion of the Dragon Slayers, and even abandoned the ancient dragon domain, and marched into the Dragon Seal world. The Dragon Slayer had a great plan. Although the Golden Dragon led a group of elites to guard the Langya Pavilion, they paled in comparison to the large number of powerful Dragon Slayers. They had to rush to the rescue. Wait! Suddenly, the Empyrean fairy shouted and stopped them. At this juncture, what are you waiting for? The Dragon King said indignantly. Tang Zheng looked at the Empyrean fairy suspiciously, waiting for her to continue. As expected, the Empyrean fairy pointed at the surrounding ruins and said, "As far as I know, the Dragon Clan went to the Langya Pavilion with their divine sense and not their physical body. Then look at this Dragon Palace. Where have you seen the Dragon Slayers?" When these words came out, it was as if they were enlightened. Tang Zheng and the Dragon King looked at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. The two of them hurriedly looked around, but there was not even a shadow of the Dragon Slayers. This meant that their physical body had entered the Dragon Seal world. Even the Dragon King was unable to do this, but the Dragon Slayers were able to do it. His expression was aghast as he said, "How did they do it?" The leader of the Dragon Slayers is a traitor of the Dragon Clan, and his cultivation is extremely high. They must have thought of a way to let their physical body enter the Dragon Seal world. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. The Empyrean fairy revealed a suspicious expression as she stared at the black hole in front of her. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind and she said, "Their physical body can enter the Dragon Seal world. Could it be related to this black hole?" Tang Zheng and the Dragon King's eyes lit up, as if they had discovered a new continent. Their gazes immediately locked onto the black hole. That's right. If the Dragon Slayers could enter the Dragon Seal world without anyone noticing, they definitely wouldn't cause such a huge commotion. This meant that they had no choice but to do so. Perhaps, it really was related to this black hole. Come, let's go in. Tang Zheng took the lead and flew into the black hole, followed by the Dragon King and the Empyrean fairy. The three figures were immediately swallowed by the black hole and disappeared without a trace. Dragon Seal World. The Golden Dragon led many elites of the Dragon Clan to hide here, quietly waiting for the Dragon Slayers to invade. However, the majority of the Dragon Clan didn't believe that the Dragon Slayers could reach the Dragon Seal world. After all, the Dragon Seal world had been peaceful for so many years, without being touched by the Dragon Slayers. It was impossible for the Dragon Slayers to suddenly come. Moreover, the Dragon Seal world was the most mysterious existence of the Dragon Clan. They didn't believe that outsiders could reach the Dragon Seal world. However, this was the order of the Dragon King and the Dragon God Envoy. They had to carry it out unconditionally. Boom! Just as many people were daydreaming, a loud sound broke the peace of the Dragon Seal world. This sound came from the sky. The Dragon Clan's spirits shook as they raised their heads to look at the sky. The sky of the Dragon Seal world was overcast, making it impossible to see the situation clearly. However, the Dragon Clan deeply felt a majestic aura appearing in the sky. One by one, the Dragon Clan looked at the Golden Dragon. He held a sacred artifact in his hand and was the leader of this team. The Golden Dragon's expression was grave and stern as he stared at the sky. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and said, "It's the enemy, the Dragon Slayers." The Dragon Clan sucked in a breath of cold air, but none of them retreated. This was because they were guarding against the invasion of the Dragon Slayers. Now, it seemed that their precautions were correct. Counterattack. The Golden Dragon made a prompt decision and gave the order. Immediately, the Dragon Clan took out their treasures and aimed them at the sky. That majestic aura descended from the sky. Finally, they saw a figure descending one after another. Dragon Slayers. The Dragon Clan shouted, "Stop them." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All kinds of treasures flew into the sky. The few Dragon Slayers who bore the brunt of the attack were caught off guard and were struck by the treasures, dying on the spot. The might of the Golden Dragon's God-striking whip was especially prominent. When the whip swept across two Dragon Slayers, their souls scattered on the spot and they fell down like kites with their strings cut. Roar roar roar. Angry roars came down from the sky, resounding throughout the world. The Dragon Slayers didn't expect that there would be an ambush here. They actually lost a few of their companions the moment they appeared. This was too much of a blow to their morale. Thus, they flew into a rage and dived towards the ground. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Treasures flew out from the hands of the Dragon Slayers and attacked the Dragon Clan on the ground. A great battle was about to break out. To read the latest novel without error, please visit. Chapter 1757. A great battle broke out, and dragon slayers that blotted out the sky and covered the earth appeared. In comparison, the dragon clan seemed to be weak. However, the golden dragon and the other dragons did not retreat. They all used their magic weapons to stop the dragon slayers. Boom, boom, boom. The dragon seal world seemed to tremble. The mountains and the earth shook. Only the Langya pavilion remained motionless, as if it had taken root. Although the dragon clan's counterattack was strong, the dragon slayers had more people and were even more ferocious. In an instant, the dragon slayers landed on the ground, not far from the Langya pavilion. A group of dragon slayers surrounded a dragon slayers. Without a doubt, this person was the leader of the dragon slayers. He had a head of silver hair and his face did not look old. He looked like a young man. However, his aura was like a rainbow, as heavy as a mountain, giving people the feeling of Mount Tai pressing down on them. With just a glance, it was as if 1,000 kilograms of weight was placed on them. He wore a silver robe that complemented his long silver hair, as if they were one. He looked around and said in a desolate tone, "I'm finally back. I don't even remember how many years it has been." As soon as he finished speaking, his gaze focused on the dragon's body, especially the deity beating whip in the golden dragon's hand. He seemed to have fallen into a deep memory and said, "The deity beating whip, I still remember its divine power back then." The golden dragon's expression turned cold as he said nervously, "You're the traitor of the dragon clan, the leader of the dragon slayers? How dare you?" The dragon slayers berated loudly. The dragon slayers smiled and said, "Traitor? He is taking back what belongs to me a traitor." He shook his head and continued, "The dragon clan will be completely destroyed from today onwards." The dragon clan's expressions changed drastically. The golden dragon was the first to explode and roared, arrogant. Whoosh! The golden dragon waved the deity beating whip, and with a flash of light, it fiercely whipped towards the leader of the dragon slayers. "How dare you!" A few dragon slayers flew up and protected in front of the leader. The light of their magic weapons flashed as they tried to stop the deity beating whip. Bang, bang, bang! The deity beating whip was a sacred weapon and had extraordinary power. When ordinary magic weapons touched the deity beating whip, they would explode. The deity beating whip went straight in and flew directly in front of the leader. The golden dragon's expression. Could it be that the deity beating whip could hit the leader of the dragon slayers? Wouldn't that make his soul scatter? However, in the next second, the golden dragon's face froze like a stone slab. The leader slowly stretched out his hand and calmly grabbed the holy whip. The light of the holy whip suddenly disappeared as if its divine power was gone. "God striking whip, long time no see." The leader let out a long sigh. The light of the god-beating whip suddenly increased. With a whoosh, it flew back and hit the golden dragon. The magic treasure turned against its owner. The others were shocked, and their expressions changed. The dragon clan made a big fuss, and the dragon slayers cheered. The golden dragon was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Seeing that the god-striking whip was getting closer and closer, he kept urging his power. The connection between him and the god-striking whip became very weak. There was a powerful force blocking the connection between him and the god-striking whip. The golden dragon knew very well that he only had one way to go. The holy whip had already locked onto him, and he had no way to escape. If he could not re-establish this connection and awaken the holy whip, he would lose his life in the hands of his own treasure. He used all of his strength, staking everything on this one throw. He roared loudly, a dragon's roar resounding through heaven and earth. Meanwhile, his entire body erupted with golden light, turning into a true dragon. He stretched his dragon claws forward and grabbed the holy whip. The leader of the dragon slayers smiled disdainfully. The other dragon clan members held their breaths. The cheers of the dragon slayers were overwhelming. In the next second, the golden dragon seemed to be about to be destroyed by the holy whip. Boom! The golden dragon grabbed the holy whip. The air exploded, and waves of air rushed in all directions. The golden dragon flew backward, leaving a deep and long mark on the ground. Finally, the golden dragon stopped in front of Langya Pavilion. If he took another step back, he would rush into Langya Pavilion. The light of the Holy Whip gradually dimmed, and his dragon claws finally grasped the Holy Whip completely. His eyes shone with golden light as he roared, "Holy Whip!" Whoosh! The Holy Whip turned into a long dragon and swept towards the nearby dragon slayers. Bang, bang, bang. The dragon slayers were scared out of their wits and died on the spot. The leader's expression froze. He sighed. Amazing. The golden dragon actually broke through his shield at the last moment and once again established contact with the Holy Whip. He regained control of the Holy Whip. The other dragon slayers were dumbfounded and in disbelief. The dragon clan members cheered and looked at the golden dragon with admiration. When the golden dragon obtained the Holy Whip, many dragon clan members criticized him in their hearts. They thought that he was just lucky and might not be worthy of the Holy Whip. But at this moment, the golden dragon used practical actions to win the recognition and admiration of his clansmen. Hearing the cheers of his clansmen, the golden dragon's heart also surged with pride. He looked at the Holy Whip in his hand and his heart moved. It was as if he had become one with the Holy Whip. Suddenly, he and the Holy Whip exploded with light, dazzling and eye-catching. Roar! With a dragon roar, the golden dragon disappeared, and the Holy Whip flew up, wrapped in a dazzling golden light. The golden dragon and the Holy Whip had become one. He was the Holy Whip, and the Holy Whip was him. This was a kind of realm, a realm that the golden dragon had never reached before. At this moment, he and the Holy Whip had a tacit understanding that others could not defeat. The leader could no longer block the connection between the golden dragon and the Holy Whip. Whoosh! The Holy Whip flew toward the leader. The dragon slayers realized the power of this attack and flew into the sky without caring about their own safety. They faced the Holy Whip and tried to stop all of this. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the dragon slayers touched the Holy Whip, their bodies and souls were destroyed. Even their bodies disappeared into thin air, turning into air. The Holy Whip flew toward the leader with an indomitable will. The leader's face became gloomy like never before. He quickly stretched out his hand and turned it into a dragon claw, but it was not golden, but silver. The silver dragon claw was placed in front of the leader, and the airflow in all directions was completely controlled by the dragon claw. Boom! The Holy Whip hit the dragon claw, and a ball of golden light and a ball of silver light instantly exploded, colliding with each other. Immediately, two balls of light soared into the sky, turning the dragon seal world into two colors, one gold and one silver. The dazzling light caused the other dragon slayers and dragon clan members to close their eyes. The rumbling sound caused everyone's eardrums to vibrate as if they were about to be pierced. After a long time, the rumbling sound disappeared. Everyone carefully opened their eyes and saw a mess. There was a huge hole in the ground, and there were many smaller holes around it. It could be said that it was full of holes. The leader stood in the air, looking as awe-inspiring as before. The golden dragon was lying on the ground, and he had already returned to his human form. His whole body was trembling, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. The Holy Whip fell beside him, dim and without light. The only thing that was undamaged was the Langya Pavilion, which was still standing firmly, bearing witness to everything. The golden dragon was defeated. The dragon clan members were shocked, but this was an inevitable result. An ant trying to shake a big tree would definitely lose. Chapter 1759. Langya. The dragon souls on the tombstones attracted the attention of the dragon slayers. Their eyes lit up as they stared at the dragon souls. The leader of the dragon slayers glanced at his subordinates and waved his hand, saying indifferently, "Go, this is the dragon soul you've been dreaming of. Charge." Hearing the leader's order, the dragon slayers seemed to have gone crazy as they swarmed into Langya and rushed towards the dragon souls. The leader didn't look at the dragon souls as if they were insignificant in his eyes. He walked towards the first floor of Langya. When he entered the second floor, he saw the tombstones and dragon souls. Of course, he knew that the dragon souls here were stronger. But he didn't linger and continued to move forward. His target wasn't the dragon souls but the dragon god fragments. The dragon slayers were deeply stimulated by the dragon souls and started to fight with each other. Everyone wanted to devour more dragon souls. In a moment, The scene was chaotic and Langya was in a mess. In the end, the dragon slayers started to fight among themselves. Some smart ones directly walked to the next floor and didn't participate in the fight. The second floor was quickly occupied by the dragon slayers. In a moment, the second floor turned into ruins. Not only the tombstones, even the dragon souls were completely devoured. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the first floor, followed by the sound of intense fighting. The dragon slayers' attention was immediately attracted and some of them directly rushed to the first floor. Bang bang bang! One by one, the dragon slayers flew up from the stairs and fell to the ground, losing their lives on the spot. The dragon clan is here. The dragon slayers roared but didn't rush to meet the enemy. Instead, a group of people rushed to the third floor. The dragon slayers tasted the sweetness and understood that the dragon souls on the next floor would be stronger. Once they devoured those dragon souls, they would become even stronger. Tang Zheng went up to the second floor and happened to see this scene. He was shocked. The dragon slayers were really smart. Once they tasted the sweetness, they went completely crazy. How could he let the dragon slayers succeed? Previously, Tang Zheng, Dragon King and Empyrean Fairy came to the Dragon Seal world from the Black Hole. At that time, the three of them were shocked. One must know that they had reached Langya with their physical bodies. In addition, Empyrean Fairy wasn't a dragon clan but she still broke through the restriction. The three of them immediately realized that the army of dragon slayers had successfully reached the Dragon Seal world. They knew very well what this meant. They rushed towards Lang Ya, who was standing upside down in an attempt to stop the dragon slayer. However, they were still one step too late. Looking at the mess on the first floor of Langya, the Dragon King's eyes turned red. Tang Zheng's face was also ashen. He had once promised the ancestors of the dragon clan that he would protect these dragon souls. Unexpectedly, he still failed. Many of the dragon souls had already been buried in the bodies of the dragon slayers. He didn't have time to regret it. He took the lead and rushed to the second floor. The dragon slayers once the dragon slayers. The Dragon King and the Fairy of the Ninth Heaven stayed behind to bring up the rear, especially the Dragon King. His eyes were red and his heart was completely filled with anger. Kill! Dragon King roared and revealed his true dragon form. He waved his claws and swept his tail. A large number of dragon slayers died. However, there were too many dragon slayers. Dragon King alone wasn't enough to eliminate them. Empyrean Fairy activated the Wuji umbrella. Rays of light shot out from the umbrella and attacked the dragon slayers. Compared to the Dragon King and Tang Zheng, the Ninth Heaven Mysterious Maiden was slightly weaker. After she defeated a few dragon slayer, she immediately fell into the encirclement of the dragon slayer and was unable to escape. Dragon King looked at the stairs to the second floor. It seemed close, but he couldn't get close. Previously, Tang Zheng caught them off guard. That was why he had the chance to escape from the army of dragon slayers and rush to the second floor. Now, all the dragon slayers reacted. Not only were they not afraid, they were full of fighting spirit. They stared at Dragon King with shining eyes. In the past, it was difficult for them to find a dragon clan member, let alone a Dragon King. Now, Dragon King was in front of them. If they could devour Dragon King's dragon soul, how powerful would they be? As long as they thought about it, they couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Greed suppressed the fear in their hearts. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers while Dragon King only had 2 people. They might have a chance of winning against Dragon King. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Therefore, many dragon slayers didn't rush to the second floor. Instead, they surrounded Dragon King. Dragon King was trapped in a sea of people. He and Empyrean Fairy didn't know about Tang Zheng's situation. They also didn't know if he stopped the other dragon slayers. Tang Zheng was in a better situation than Dragon King. After all, there were only a few dragon slayers who rushed to the second floor. However, these dragon slayers were elites and had strong combat power. Therefore, Tang Zheng was facing a strong attack. He could only fight back. Looking at the stairs leading to the third floor, he just couldn't get close to it. The hidden mysterious sword's light almost occupied half of the floor. However, The dragon slayers didn't show any weakness. They attacked with treasures. Among them, there were even divine weapons. Although they weren't as powerful as the hidden mysterious sword, the power of all of them together couldn't be underestimated. Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. How could he be willing to be held back like this? He glared at the dragon slayers who were close to him. He waved his hand and shouted, "Sky-swallowing technique." Swoosh! A black hole appeared in his palm and expanded rapidly. In an instant, it enveloped the two dragon slayers in front of him. The dragon slayers felt the power of devouring and struggled with all their might. However, the power of the sky-swallowing technique was too strong. Before the dragon slayers could scream, they were sucked into the black hole. When the other dragon slayers saw this, they were shocked. They didn't expect their opponent to have such a remarkable ability. They kept retreating, trying to avoid the suction of the black hole. The path in front of Tang Zheng was clear. He rushed to the third floor in a flash. Without the support of its owner, the black hole sucked in two more dragon slayers and disappeared. However, the other dragon slayers still had lingering fear. This remarkable ability made them feel a strong threat. Their resistance seemed to be futile. Chase. Seeing Tang Zheng's figure disappear at the stairs, the dragon slayers seemed to have woken up from a dream. In the end, they gritted their teeth and chased after him. Although the enemy was strong, the suction of the dragon soul on the floor of Langya was stronger. It restrained the fear in their hearts. When they rushed to the third floor, they didn't see Tang Zheng's figure. Many dragon slayers were immediately attracted by the stronger dragon soul. They all rushed toward the dragon soul. Bang, bang, bang. However, they were all bounced back and crashed into the wall in a disorderly manner, crying out in pain. This wasn't because of pain, but because of anger. How could they not understand that all of this was related to Tang Zheng? Tang Zheng reached the third floor first and quickly set up a restriction to stop them from tormenting the dragon soul. Recently, my house has been renovating and I've been troubled by various miscellaneous matters. I'm sorry for the delay. Chapter 1760. The dragon slayers were all blocked by the restrictions. Looking at the dragon soul that was close at hand, this was a supreme delicacy, yet they could only look at it, unable to get close at all. This feeling was really uncomfortable, and all of them widened their eyes, their eyeballs almost popping out. Roar! The dragon slayers roared into the sky, their anger soaring, and roared toward the staircase that led to the fourth floor. Tang Zheng heard their roars, and was indifferent. If there was no time, he would definitely stay to destroy them, and not give them a chance to roar. He took the lead, and set up restrictions on every floor that followed, not giving the dragon slayers a chance to torture the dragon soul. The higher the floor, the stronger the dragon soul, and if the dragon slayers absorbed it, their strength would also become more terrifying. Tang Zheng naturally wouldn't sit by and watch this happen, and set up restrictions all over, not giving the dragon slayers any chance. But he wasn't happy at all, because the dragon slayers' leader's figure was nowhere to be seen, and there was no way to know which floor the leader went to. The dragon god fragment, he's definitely going for that, Tang Zheng concluded. Whoosh! He directly chased to the 9th floor, but there was still no sign of the leader. He looked at the stairs that led to the 10th floor, and his expression darkened. One had to cultivate the advanced version of the dragon god technique to enter the 10th floor, but the leader had entered without any obstruction. This gave him an enormous amount of pressure, but it also caused him to be extremely confused. How exactly did she accomplish this? That was the 10th floor, after all. He didn't have time to think too much. He took a deep breath and rushed to the 10th floor with a whoosh, but it was still empty, and there was no sign of the dragon slayer's leader. Gasp! Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air, and his eyes became gloomy. He didn't stop, and quickly reached the 11th floor, but there was no sign of a ghost. His heart became anxious, and he quickly rushed to the 12th floor. When he just set foot on this floor, he saw a silver figure at the entrance of the stairs that led to the 13th floor. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat, his whole body on guard as he loudly shouted, "Stop!" The other party was using a divine ability, and the entire floor was rippling with a terrifying aura. How could Tang Zheng not understand the other party's intentions? He immediately shouted to stop them. However, this action did not have any effect at all. The other party turned his head and looked at him coldly. He did not care and turned his head away again. Tang Zheng was actually ignored. Tang Zheng widened his eyes and said furiously, "I told you to stop." He did not say anything else. The hidden sword of Xian exploded with a bright light in his hand. His body flashed, and he already flew towards the enemy. Of course, this person was the leader of the Dragon Slayers. When he heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind him, as well as that overwhelming aura, he could no longer ignore it. He waved his hand backwards, and a silver light shot out, hitting the hidden mystic sword. Boom! After a muffled sound, the hidden mystic sword almost flew out of his hand. From this, one could see how powerful the leader was. Tang Zheng was unmoved. Sword flowers bloomed from his hand, like thousands of pear trees blooming. The sword light instantly surrounded the enemy. The leader's pupils shrank slightly. He said in surprise, "You actually have such great ability. In the land of the Dragon Clan, when did an expert like you appear?" Tang Zheng snorted and said, "As a member of the Dragon Clan, you betrayed the Dragon Clan. You even led others to harm the Dragon Clan and devour the dragon souls of other Dragon Clans. You are too despicable and shameless." The leader snorted and laughed, "I'm despicable and shameless? The position of Dragon King originally belonged to me, but it was taken away by that damned guy. How can I not be angry? Then why did you do such a crazy thing?" Tang Zheng asked. "The Dragon Clan was heartless to me, so I naturally will not be righteous. I will destroy the Dragon Clan and let that old thing see how wrong he is. I will let him see who is the most suitable Dragon King," the leader said indignantly. Tang Zheng was very clear that the old thing he was talking about was the leader's father, the former Dragon King. Your actions show the wisdom of the old Dragon King. If he gave the position of Dragon King to you, then he would be leading the Dragon Clan to destruction. Tang Zheng retorted. "I lead the Dragon Clan to destruction?" The leader sneered indifferently. "I should lead the Dragon Clan to glory. Look at the Dragon Clan now. They are the ones heading to destruction. But all of this started because of you," Tang Zheng added. The leader snorted and said, "So what if it started because of me? This is the price the Dragon Clan should pay. You really are a lunatic. You are unreasonable." Tang Zheng shook his head. He had completely lost interest in theory. He pointed to the stairs and said, "You want to go to the 13th floor, right? Not only do I want to go to the 13th floor, I also want to go to the higher floors." The leader did not hide his intentions at all and said arrogantly, "Then why did you stop?" Tang Zheng asked jokingly, "Do you really think a small restriction can stop me from moving forward?" The leader retorted, "If the restriction can't stop you, then there's still me." Tang Zheng was not sure if the restriction could stop the leader. After all, his strength was too strong. Even so, didn't he still have him? He saw him stand between the leader and the stairs without any hesitation. He was cold and fearless as he looked at the leader with a firm gaze. The leader curled his lips in disdain and said, "You don't know what's good for you. How disappointing. Then I'll kill you first and then go take the Dragon God Fragment. Do you want the Dragon God Fragment that much? Then I'll let you take a look and broaden your horizons." Tang Zheng roared. His entire body emitted a dazzling golden light. He was like a golden man. His 5 fingers changed with a whoosh, turning into a giant dragon claw. Whoosh! The dragon claw grabbed at the leader aggressively. The dragon's might was even emitted. This was the dragon's might of the dragon god. It could specifically restrain other dragon clans. Even the Dragon King was no exception. Back then, Tang Zheng used the might of the dragon god to intimidate the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Clan did not even dare to resist. Now he wanted to use the same trick again. After all, the Dragon God Fragment had a deterrent effect on the Dragon Clan. The other party was also one of the Dragon Clan. It was impossible for him to not be affected. The leader trembled as he looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief and asked, "You've already fused with the Dragon God Fragment?" The leader had seen the Dragon God before, so he was naturally no stranger to the Dragon God's might. He recognized it at a glance. Tang Zheng proudly raised the corner of his mouth and said, You have some eyesight. The leader's face sank and said, You're worthy of fusing with the dragon god fragment. Preposterous. He stretched out his hand and turned it into a dragon claw. The silver dragon claw directly grabbed at Tang Zheng. He was actually not affected by the dragon god's might. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide in disbelief and exclaimed, How is this possible? Why aren't you afraid of the dragon god's might? The leader snorted and laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, if I were afraid of the dragon god's might, how could I dare to betray the dragon clan? How could I oppose the dragon clan? Chapter 1761. Tang Zheng was caught by the dragon claw. He let out a dragon roar and transformed into a true dragon. With a sweep of his dragon tail, he hit the silver dragon claw. Boom! The air fluctuated violently, and the gold and silver lights exploded like gorgeous fireworks. Tang Zheng quickly retreated, and the dragon claw was also knocked away. Both sides did not gain any advantage. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, and he stared at the leader with his huge dragon eyes. He sighed with emotion. It's really extraordinary. No wonder the dragon clan is like a stray dog all these years. The leader raised the corner of his mouth and laughed proudly. Of course, when I integrate with the dragon god's fragment, the dragon clan will be completely wiped out. While speaking, the leader's dragon claw suddenly grabbed the stairs leading to the next floor. Boom! Lang Wei shook like the mountains and the earth. Catcher! A strange sound came from the stairs. This. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not cultivate the advanced version of the dragon god technique to the corresponding level, so there was no way for him to go to the corresponding floor. How could the leader break through this restriction? Could it be that he had cultivated the advanced version of the dragon god technique? No. Tang Zheng was shocked. The leader and the dragon god were brothers, so it was not strange that he had cultivated the dragon god technique. It was not difficult to explain why he could reach the corresponding floor. This damn Lang Wei didn't have so many restrictions in the past. That guy must have deliberately added restrictions later and hid the dragon god's fragment after his death in these floors. The leader looked at the stairs and muttered to himself, he must have thought that although I am no longer a dragon, I have cultivated the advanced version of the dragon god technique. Although it takes a little effort, how can these restrictions stop me? Tang Zheng was shocked, as he had guessed a little bit of what was going on. But his heart sank. The leader was not restricted by Lang Wei, so the dragon god's fragment was dangerous. Once the leader integrated with the dragon god's fragment, the consequences would be unimaginable. I must not let him break through the restrictions. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and rushed over, shouting, Stop! Whoosh! He stretched out his dragon claw and aimed at the leader. A black hole appeared, and a terrifying suction force enveloped the leader in an instant. Huh! The leader blinked his eyes in surprise and said, That's interesting. The leader's body emitted a dazzling silver light. In an instant, the entire floor was covered in a layer of silver light. Roar! A thunderous roar rang out as the leader underwent an earth-shattering transformation. He turned into a giant silver dragon, and the dragon horns on his head were even longer than Tang Zheng's. The terrifying aura he emitted made one's heart palpitate. However, this dragon might was worlds apart from Tang Zheng's. His aura was extremely cold, completely different from Tang Zheng's dragon might. Although he still had the body of a dragon, he was no longer a dragon in his bones. The sky-swallowing technique's powerful suction force pulled the leader towards the black hole. The leader kept struggling, but he was still getting closer and closer to the black hole. Whoosh! He waved his dragon claws, and the air was torn apart. The aura of this floor was completely disrupted, like seawater flowing in the dark. Wave after wave rolled towards the black hole, trying to offset the terrifying suction force. It had to be said that this method was very effective. This stormy wave of power really offset a portion of the suction force. The leader's figure was suddenly stunned, and he temporarily broke free from the black hole's shackles. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he roared and rushed straight to the staircase. Stop! When Tang Zheng saw this, how could he not understand the opponent's intention? He flew into a rage and desperately urged the sky-swallowing technique. Suddenly, the suction force of the sky-swallowing technique increased sharply, and all the stormy waves of power were sucked into the black hole. However, it was still too late to stop the leader, and he used both his dragon claws and dragon tail. Boom! Boom! A series of attacks landed on the restriction at the staircase, and Langya stopped shaking. Crack! An ear-piercing shattering sound resounded through the sky, and the restriction shattered into pieces, disappearing into thin air. Tang Zheng was stunned. He never thought that he could break this restriction by relying on brute force. He couldn't do it, but the leader of the Dragon Slayers did. One could imagine how shocked he was. Ha ha ha, I told you that this lousy restriction can't stop me. The leader's eyes shone brightly, and he laughed arrogantly. The leader's figure flashed, and he rushed to the staircase. As if waking up from a dream, Tang Zheng quickly chased after him. Since the restriction was broken, although he didn't cultivate the corresponding level of the Dragon God technique, he could still smoothly reach the 13th floor. Hiss! When he reached the 13th floor, he couldn't help but gasp. The leader of the Dragon Slayers was already trying to fuse with the Dragon God fragment. He rose into the air and flew toward the Dragon God fragment. Originally, the Dragon Clan was not allowed to fly freely in Langya, but the leader forcefully broke through the restriction, and even this restriction was broken. Therefore, he could fly freely. No! Tang Zheng roared and also rose into the air. His speed was not slower than the leader's. Both sides reached the Dragon God fragment almost at the same time, and both of them reached out their dragon claws to grab the Dragon God fragment. Whoosh! Both dragon claws touched the Dragon God fragment at the same time, and two suction forces enveloped the Dragon God fragment, trying to fuse with it first. The leader glared at Tang Zheng with fire in his eyes, and roared, "How can you touch the fat meat that's already in my mouth?" Whoosh! As soon as he said that, his dragon tail swept toward Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was not to be outdone, and with a roar, his dragon tail also went up to meet it. Boom! Gold and silver rays of light bloomed, and two dragon scales actually flew up and separated from each other's bodies, leaving a large, shocking, and bloody scar. However, they continued to attack as if nothing had happened, and neither of them was willing to be outdone. Boom boom boom! The mountains shook and the earth shook, the dragon tails collided, and dragon scales mixed with blood danced in the air. Gradually, the air was filled with a strong smell of blood. Their eyes had also turned crimson, and they couldn't care less about their own bloody wounds. All they wanted was to be the first to fuse with the Dragon God fragment. In terms of cultivation and strength, the leader of the Dragon Slayers was superior to Tang Zheng. However, in terms of familiarity with the Dragon God fragment, Tang Zheng was slightly better. After all, he had already fused with 3 Dragon God fragments and had rich experience, and also understood the attributes of the Dragon God fragment better. "You're actually so tenacious. Trying to get a share of my Dragon God fragment, die." The leader of the Dragon Slayers roared furiously, and used both his claws and tail. 8 dragon claws grabbed toward Tang Zheng together, and the dragon tail swept out with greater force. Fight! Tang Zheng gritted his teeth, knowing that victory would be decided in this one move. How could he not go all out? Boom boom boom! Light bloomed, and this floor was dyed in gold and silver, mixed with the red of blood. Tang Zheng flew backward, and the leader showed a smug expression, but in the next moment, his expression froze. 3 balls of light flew out from the dragon horns on Tang Zheng's head, and they emitted the aura of the Dragon God. Chapter 1762. The strongest cultivator was on campus. The Dragon God fragment seemed to have met its loved ones as it quickly merged with the 3 balls of light. Tang Zheng was secretly delighted. Those 3 balls of light were clearly the Dragon God fragments that he had fused with, and they were not completely absorbed and digested by his body. Now that this remnant soul of the Dragon God fragment had attracted this part of the Dragon God fragments, they took the initiative to break away from the Dragon Slayer leader's restraint. The 4 balls of light disappeared into Tang Zheng's dragon horns. Immediately, Tang Zheng's body bloomed with a dazzling golden light, making it almost impossible to open one's eyes. The leader used his dragon claws to block the dazzling light while roaring angrily, "Damn it, it's actually other Dragon God fragments causing trouble and ruining my plans." He was not stupid and had already seen through the clues. The dragon god fragments that Tang Zheng had fused with before were attracting the dragon god fragments from the outside world. In this way, he was at a disadvantage. If he competed with Tang Zheng for the dragon god fragments at the same time, he would definitely not be able to win. No, I forcefully broke through the restriction. How can I let this kid take advantage of me? The leader was unwilling to give up and did not want to be entangled with Tang Zheng at all. While he was fusing with the dragon god fragments, he rushed to the next floor. Tang Zheng looked at this scene helplessly because the dragon god fragments had already fused with his dragon horns, and he had to take time to fuse with them. Otherwise, the powerful energy contained in the dragon god fragments was enough to cause him to suffer a backlash, which would be counterproductive. Tang Zheng shouted unwillingly, "Stop!" Boom! With a loud bang, the restriction at the top of the stairs shattered. The enemy had only attacked once, and the restriction had collapsed. Haha, this restriction is so fragile, how can it stop me? Dragon god fragments, I'm coming. The leader turned his head and glared at Tang Zheng before charging in and disappearing from sight. Tang Zheng looked at this scene and already understood what was going on. The leader had forcefully destroyed too many restrictions and caused a chain reaction, causing the restrictions behind to become very fragile. This meant that the leader could forcefully break into the floors behind Langya Pavilion. Tang Zheng's mind was greatly shaken, as what this meant was self-evident. He threw his head back and let out a long roar, accelerating the fusion of the dragon god fragment so that he could catch up as soon as possible. Tang Zheng's entire body glowed with a golden light as the dragon scales that had fallen off grew back. Not long after, Tang Zheng's injuries were completely healed, and a section of the dragon horns on his head had also grown out. The dragon might emanating from his body grew even stronger, making others not dare to look at him directly. He stared at the stairs and growled, "I'm coming." Whoosh! He turned into a beam of golden light and rushed into the staircase. When his feet landed on the next floor, his eyes turned cold and his face turned pale. He watched as the dragon slayer leader fused a dragon god fragment into his own body. Immediately, his entire body was enveloped by a silver light. He has already fused with the dragon god fragment. I was one step too late. He stomped his foot hatefully, but there was nothing he could do. There was no way he could take the dragon god fragment out of the other party's body. He didn't have that ability yet. As for taking the opportunity to kill the leader, that was also unrealistic. At this time, the dragon god fragment was also protecting the leader, so it wouldn't be easy to kill him. Tang Zheng's gaze involuntarily shifted to the next floor. An idea came to him. Since the leader could forcefully break the restriction, then he could do it too. The two of them would compete to see who could fuse with more dragon god fragments. This was already the last resort. Tang Zheng didn't hesitate at all. His figure flashed, and he directly rushed toward the stairs. Boom! A beam of light shot out from the dragon horns and directly hit the restriction. Amidst the loud noise, a wave of ripples spread out, and then like a mirror, it shattered and fell to the ground. Tang Zheng quickly rushed into the staircase and reached the 15th floor. He locked onto the dragon god fragment in the air with a single glance and leaped into the air, flying toward it. 4 balls of light shot out from the dragon horns and firmly locked onto the dragon god fragment. Whoosh! The dragon god fragment was absorbed into his body, and his whole body emitted a dazzling golden light again. The leader of the dragon slayers just happened to see this scene when he climbed up the stairs. He gritted his teeth in indignation. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only choose to ignore it and rush to the next floor. Boom! After a loud noise, the restriction at the stairs shattered again, and the leader disappeared from the stairs. Tang Zheng saw this scene, but he could only feel anxious and try his best to fuse with the dragon god fragment. The golden light receded. After fusing with the dragon god fragment, Tang Zheng's dragon might became even stronger. The dragon scales all over his body were like a layer of golden armor, majestic and awe-inspiring. He also quickly rushed to the 15th floor, but he was a step too late. He knew that this would be the result, but he wasn't discouraged. He didn't take another look at the leader and directly rushed to the 16th floor. Boom! The restriction was broken, and he successfully reached the 16th floor and quickly fused with the dragon god fragment again. After the leader chased him to the 16th floor, he only casually glanced at Tang Zheng before continuing to move forward. The two of them already had a tacit understanding. They knew that they were competing to see who could fuse with more dragon god fragments. As long as they could fuse with more dragon god fragments, they would have a great advantage in the final battle. The leader knew that he was lagging behind, so he could only catch up. He was unwilling to let Tang Zheng fuse with another dragon god fragment. There was a saint tool on every floor, and these two didn't even have the mind to pay attention to those saint tools. They only had eyes for the dragon god fragment. Everything else was irrelevant and not worth their time and energy. After Tang Zheng reached the 16th floor, he directly rushed to the 17th floor. When he reached the 17th floor, he was surprised to find that this dragon god fragment was a little bigger, and its light was more dazzling. Its aura was more powerful, and it was fundamentally different from the previous one. Could it be that this dragon god fragment is more powerful? Tang Zheng shook his head and didn't think too much about it. He tapped his feet and soared into the air, putting this dragon god fragment into his bag. Whoosh! Light shot out from every pore of Tang Zheng's body. He was like a sun, extremely dazzling. Surging power gushed out from every pore of his body, making him feel extremely satisfied. This was an unprecedented experience. Somehow, Tang Zheng already understood that this dragon god fragment couldn't be compared to the previous ones. He was wild with joy, and quickly fused with the dragon god fragment, trying to absorb the energy within as soon as possible. However, this energy was really too huge. It was impossible for him to finish fusing it in a short time. Bang! The leader of the Dragon Slayers reached this floor and just happened to see Tang Zheng, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. He also saw the abnormality. He stared straight at the golden light that bloomed, and his eyes lit up. He muttered, "The dragon god fragment at the back is more powerful. Langya Pavilion only has a total of 18 floors, and this is already the 17th floor. The energy of the dragon god fragment is naturally more powerful." He raised his head abruptly and looked at the stairs leading to the 18th floor. In this way, wouldn't the dragon god fragment on the 18th floor be the most powerful? Immediately, his blood boiled, and he looked at Tang Zheng triumphantly. "Brat, although you reached the 17th floor first, this 18th floor is mine. Haha, the heavens are on my side." Whoosh! He rushed toward the stairs leading to the 18th floor as fast as lightning. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Please bookmark this site to read the latest novels. Read refreshing novels and reach peak. Chapter 1763. The leader of the Dragon Slayers rushed toward the stairs as fast as lightning and swung his silver dragon claw. Boom! With a loud bang, the mountain shook and the earth shook. The Dragon Slayer was like a kite with a broken string. He flew backwards and fell to the ground in a sorry state. What's going on? The leader got up and looked at the calm staircase. Tang Zheng had been trying his best to fuse with the dragon god fragment. Seeing the leader rushing toward the stairs, his heart jumped to his throat, but there was nothing he could do. What happened next made his jaw drop. He never would have thought that the overbearing leader would actually fail. He had already fused with a few dragon god fragments, and his strength had increased greatly. But he still couldn't shake the restriction at the stairs. Didn't he easily break through the restrictions in front of him? Why was this restriction so special? This was the last restriction. Could it be that there was something mysterious or strange about it? Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. As long as this restriction was strong enough to prevent the other party from breaking it in a short time, then the crisis could be temporarily resolved. Tang Zheng didn't want to miss the opportunity, so he quickly fused with the dragon god fragment. Whoosh! Surging energy flowed in his body, and golden light burst out from every pore. His whole body swelled up as energy supported his body. At the same time, he felt his pure yang power increasing rapidly. The energy of the dragon god fragment was too powerful. It quickly increased his strength, and it also increased the pure yang power in his body. The pros and cons appeared at the same time, but Tang Zheng couldn't stop, and he didn't dare to stop. He could only try his best to fuse with the dragon god fragment and increase his strength. He had to fight for that slim chance of survival. Otherwise, not only him, but also the entire dragon tribe would be wiped out. He naturally wouldn't sit back and watch this happen. The leader glanced at Tang Zheng and immediately felt the pressure on his shoulders increase. Tang Zheng fused with the dragon god fragment so quickly. If he didn't take this opportunity to reach the last floor, then his advantage would be gone. At first, he was confident that he could suppress Tang Zheng in terms of cultivation, but now Tang Zheng had fused with more dragon god fragments than him. As for who was stronger, the leader did not have absolute confidence in the strength of the two sides. Therefore, he had to fight for the dragon god fragment on the last floor. His eyes lit up as he stared at the stairs. He gritted his teeth and said, "No matter what kind of restriction it is, don't even think about stopping me." Whoosh! Whoosh! His entire body glowed brightly as streaks of silver light shot out from his dragon claws at the same time, intertwining together to form a huge silver pillar of light. Boom! The beam of light hit the restrictive spell at lightning speed, and a circle of ripples spread out from the restrictive spell. Immediately, the air on this floor rippled, and a powerful shockwave spread in all directions. The floor creaked, and the floor kept shaking, as if it was about to collapse. This was a much bigger commotion than before. However, the restrictions were still intact. The leader's eyes were filled with disbelief. "I don't believe it. Even if I have to defeat the Langya Pavilion, I will still ascend to the 18th floor." His whole body shone brightly, and his dragon horns stretched out from the top of his head, growing a few centimeters in an instant. He shook his huge body and turned into a ray of silver light, with his dragon horns in front and his dragon body behind. Boom! The dragon horns hit the restrictive spell, and in an instant, silver light poured out from the dragon horns like a waterfall, covering the entire staircase like mercury. This time, he was not sent flying. A wave of vibrating power spread out from the point of impact. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank when he saw this scene, and he cried out in surprise. He had already realized what was about to happen. The leader's eyes also lit up, full of silver light. He also realized what was about to happen. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he roared, "Break!" Surging power shot out from the dragon horns. Crack! Cracks appeared on the silver light that covered the staircase, and then it shattered. Accompanied by a crisp sound, silver light sprinkled down like silver-white flowers, flying in all directions. The restrictive spell disappeared without a trace. The leader laughed wildly, and the silver light on his body disappeared. He proudly showed off, "What kind of lousy restrictive spell is this? You want to stop me? Dream on." He did not dare to delay, and his figure flashed, rushing to the staircase. Whoosh! A figure was faster than him, and blocked the staircase. Bang! The two sides collided, and the leader took a few steps back, but the other side only took one step back. "You finished fusing so quickly." The leader glared fiercely at Tang Zheng, gritting his teeth and saying. Victory was in sight, and Tang Zheng, this Cheng Yaojin, had appeared. How could he remain calm? He knew very well what this meant. If he was not careful, he might even let Tang Zheng take advantage of him. He absolutely could not tolerate this happening. His body shone brightly, and he was furious. He said, "Do you want to die?" Tang Zheng sneered and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had finished fusing with the dragon god fragment at the last moment. Otherwise, the leader would have really succeeded. At this moment, not only was the true qi in his body surging, but even the pure yang energy was rippling non-stop, ready to move. If it was in the past, he definitely would not have been able to suppress this pure yang energy, but now that his strength had increased, his ability to suppress the pure yang energy had also risen. However, this was not a long-term solution. This was like a dammed lake that could burst at any time. Therefore, he was walking on a tightrope now. If he was not careful, he could be doomed eternally. However, he could not care less. He had to stop the leader and not let him step onto the 18th floor. In fact, he was also very curious about how powerful the dragon god fragment on the 18th floor was. After all, the dragon god fragment on the 17th floor was already so powerful that it was beyond his imagination. It was hard to imagine what the 18th floor would be like. Seeing that Tang Zheng did not move and showed no signs of retreating, the leader knew that a fierce battle was inevitable. He could only rely on force to break through. He approached Tang Zheng step by step. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, and the golden light retracted as he stared at the other party warily. Both sides were ready to attack. Without any unnecessary words, two figures, one gold and one silver, collided with each other. Suddenly, an earth-shattering battle broke out. Langya Pavilion shook, and the walls on all sides rustled and fell down, as if they could collapse at any time. Downstairs, the Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy had gone through a fierce battle, and many corpses of the Dragon Slayers lay around them. However, there were too many Dragon Slayers, and they were too powerful. They moved forward almost inch by inch. However, they did not give up. Their eyes were very determined. When they heard an earth-shattering sound coming from below, the inverted Langya Pavilion shook, and their nerves jumped violently. Both sides looked at each other and saw through each other's thoughts. They gritted their teeth and said in unison, "Charge!" Chapter 1764. Charge! Dragon King and Empyrean Fairy shouted in unison. Langya Pavilion was on the verge of collapse. They were very clear that something must have happened. Dragon King could not wait to find out. In addition, he was also very worried about the Dragon God fragment. That was a treasure that he had been longing for a long time. He did not know if the enemy had taken advantage of it. If the enemy had really merged with the Dragon God fragment, it meant that the following battle would be even more brutal. Dragon King did not dare to continue thinking. The more he thought, the more flustered he became. There was only one thought in his mind. Charge! Bang! With a sweep of his dragon tail, a few dragon slayers were cut in half. With a flash of golden light, he transformed back into his human form. With a whoosh, he passed through the dragon slayers with difficulty. Empyrean Fairy was already injured, but she was still in good spirits. Following Dragon King's footsteps closely, they passed through many dragon slayers and disappeared at the staircase. Boom! 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 Suddenly a series of explosions sounded in the air of the Dragon Seal world. The Dragon Clan's army appeared. They followed Dragon King and the others and arrived at the underwater Dragon Palace. Naturally, they also discovered the huge black hole. Following the black hole, they successfully arrived at the Dragon Seal world. Unexpectedly, as soon as they arrived, the Dragon Slayers who were guarding outside Langya Pavilion launched a fierce attack. The Dragon Clan's morale was high after their first victory. They overcame their fear of the Dragon Slayers and charged down without a care for their own safety. Immediately, the outside of Langya Pavilion became a chaotic battlefield. The Golden Dragon and the rest of the Dragon Clan were saved. Looking at the chaotic battlefield, the Golden Dragon roared, "Dragon envoys, the enemy has already gone to the inverted Langya Pavilion. The Dragon God fragment is in danger, we must immediately go and support." The few dragon envoys were frightened and shouted, "Quickly go and support Dragon King." Whoosh! 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 Most of the Dragon Clan flew to the inverted Langya Pavilion, including the Golden Dragon. When they arrived at the inverted Langya Pavilion, they realized that it was in chaos. Ruins were everywhere, and the scattered tombstones were telling the story of what had just happened. "Ah!" the Dragon Clan exclaimed, their eyes were red. The owners of these tombstones were the ancestors of the Dragon Clan. But now, their dragon souls were sucked away by the Dragon Slayers. How could they not be angry? The flames of anger had been ignited and spread rapidly among the Dragon Clan. "Kill, exterminate the Dragon Slayers." The Dragon Envoy raised his arms and shouted. Everyone else followed suit, and an earth-shattering roar soared into the sky. The Dragon Clan rushed into the Langya Pavilion like a tide. Wherever they passed, it was a mess. Soon after, they encountered the Dragon Slayers. When enemies met, their eyes burned with hatred. There was no need for any superfluous words. The dragons flew towards the Dragon Slayer without the slightest bit of fear from before. The Dragon Slayers did not take the Dragon Clan seriously at all. Just now, they even let the Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy escape. They were already full of anger. Immediately, they flew towards the dragon clan. A great battle was on the verge of breaking out. Both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. Fresh blood trickled down the stairs and into the depths of Langya Pavilion. In the inverted Langya Pavilion, the lower the floors were. Fresh blood flowed down the stairs and dyed the Langya Pavilion blood-red. The stench of blood filled the air in Langya Pavilion. It was nauseating. Whether it was the Dragon Clan or the Dragon Slayers, they did not care about the stench of blood. They only had one goal in mind: to destroy the other party. The Dragon Slayers were not inferior to the Dragon Clan. At first, the Dragon Slayers left, so the Dragon Clan smoothly gained the upper hand. However, the Langya Pavilion was filled with the elites of the Dragon Slayers. They were the masters of the masters. After the Dragon Clan and the Dragon Slayers clashed, there were casualties. There were casualties on both sides, but the Dragon Clan had more casualties. A dragon envoy also died in the hands of the Dragon Slayers. Some of the other dragon envoys were also injured. However, none of the Dragon Clan retreated. They all gritted their teeth and persevered. The golden dragon was covered in blood. He looked like a blood dragon. The holy whip in the golden dragon's hand was also dyed red. One by one, the Dragon Slayers fell under the holy whip. This was destined to be a long battle. No one could stay out of it. No one could escape. However, this successfully stopped the Dragon Slayers from advancing to the floors in front and protected the dragon souls and tombs of the Dragon Clan ancestors behind. On the 17th floor, the battle between Tang Zheng and the leader was getting more and more intense. When the Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy arrived, they saw the mess and the intense battle. Both of them were shocked. At this moment, they realized a lot of things. They knew that they were no match for the other party. Especially the Dragon King. He was originally not weaker than Tang Zheng, but now that Tang Zheng had integrated too many Dragon God fragments, the Dragon King could not catch up. They have all integrated the Dragon God fragments. The Dragon King's eyes dimmed. His heart was bleeding. He had been coveting the Dragon God fragments, but they were all taken advantage of. He did not even have any soup left. What should we do? The Dragon King was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. After the Empyrean Fairy recovered from her shock, she calmed down. She had already accepted that Tang Zheng was stronger than her. Seeing that his strength had improved by leaps and bounds, she was relieved. Traitor, you have also integrated the Dragon God fragments. The Dragon King gritted his teeth and roared at the leader. While dealing with Tang Zheng, the leader glanced at the Dragon King and said in disdain, "A mere Dragon King dares to talk nonsense in front of me. So what if I have integrated the Dragon God fragments? If not for the old Dragon King's interference, I would be the real Dragon God." Shameless boasting. With your ability, you can never become the Dragon God. The Dragon King retorted. The leader snorted in disdain. He could not be bothered to talk nonsense with the Dragon King. With a wave of his dragon claw, a silver light flew towards the Dragon King. The Dragon King was facing a great enemy and hurriedly channeled his energy. With a loud bang, the Dragon King retreated quickly and only stopped when he hit the wall. Fart! The Dragon King spat out a mouthful of blood. The enemy's casual attack was so powerful that even the Dragon King could not block it. Just how powerful was he? The Dragon King was in disbelief. With an ashen face, he said, "The Dragon God fragments are so powerful. It's a pity that this traitor took advantage of it." He was so angry that he was about to vomit blood again. The leader disdainfully said to Tang Zheng, "Other than you, no one in the Dragon Clan can fight against me. Where did you come from? How come I never knew that the Dragon Clan had an expert like you?" Tang Zheng and the leader fought fiercely and both sides fell into a stalemate. The longer the battle, the more agitated the pure yang energy in his body became. At first, he had a way to suppress it. But as time passed, he found that he could not suppress the pure yang energy anymore. This caused his fighting strength to gradually decline. He had integrated more Dragon God fragments and could originally suppress the enemy. But the reality was so cruel that he could not do anything. He looked at the Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy and anxiously shouted, "Back off, you are not his match." Ha ha ha. The leader laughed proudly. The Dragon King's eyes narrowed. He was unafraid of death. With a roar, he rushed towards the leader without caring about his injuries. The Empyrean fairy also moved. She did not rush towards the leader. Instead, she used her petite body to dash through the gap between Tang Zheng and the leader and rushed to the 18th floor. I know that the recent updates are really bad. There are too many things and I don't want to find any excuses. The story is coming to an end. I will slowly finish it. Chapter 1765. The mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens directly rushed to the 18th floor. This scene gave everyone a fright. The leader of the dragon slayers roared, "How dare you! Stop!" Whoosh! The Empyrean fairy was even faster, disappearing from the corridor in the blink of an eye. A smile appeared on Tang Zheng's face as he stood in front of the leader, not giving him a chance to chase. A strange look flashed across the Dragon King's eyes. He did not have much of a relationship with the Empyrean fairy after all, but she had beaten him to it. But he had no choice. The enemy was too strong. He and Tang Zheng could only work together to stop the enemy from advancing. Get lost! The leader roared hysterically, forcing Tang Zheng and the Dragon King to retreat. But the two did not stop and rushed up crazily again. The leader did not fight back. He pretended to be polite and evaded, but his eyes were fixed on the stairs leading to the 18th floor. Tang Zheng knew what the leader was thinking. He said jokingly, "If you want to go up, you have to go through us first." The Dragon King was worried that the Empyrean fairy would beat him to it, but he knew that he could not let the leader go up to the 18th floor. So, in comparison, he was more willing to maintain the current situation. He made up his mind and stared at the leader aggressively, saying, "Traitor, how can you touch the things left behind by the dragon god?" The leader snorted in disdain, saying, "I have already merged with many fragments of the dragon god. As long as I merge with the last fragment, the world will be mine." Wishful thinking. Tang Zheng and the Dragon King shouted at the same time and rushed up without caring about their own safety. The battle between the three parties was very intense. It was frightening, and the aftermath of the battle was constantly hurting Langya. Langya was on the verge of collapse. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the 18th floor, attracting their attention. What was going on? 3 pairs of eyes looked at the 18th floor at the same time. Boom boom boom! A few more loud sounds came, and Langya shook even more violently, as if it could collapse at any time. Charred! The same thought appeared in the minds of the 3 of them at the same time. They gave up on killing each other and rushed towards the 18th floor like arrows released from a bow. Tang Zheng was originally blocking the staircase, so he suddenly turned around and took the lead to rush to the front. The chief was only a small step behind, and he followed closely behind. The Dragon King followed behind the chief, and the 3 figures passed through the corridor in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Tang Zheng rushed to the 18th floor, and a dazzling light shot out. Instead, he opened his eyes wide, unwilling to miss a single detail. Ah! When he saw the scene in the dazzling light, he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Dragon horn! He saw a huge dragon horn floating in the air, but there were no other fragments of the dragon god. Why is it a dragon horn and not a dragon god fragment? Tang Zheng was confused. However, he was immediately attracted by another scene. He saw the Empyrean fairy fall to the ground and look at the dragon horn in despair. What's going on? Tang Zheng hurriedly asked. There's something wrong with this dragon horn. I can't get close to it at all. The Empyrean fairy said dejectedly. The dragon horn is mine. The chief rushed to the 18th floor and directly rushed towards the dragon horn in the air. How could Tang Zheng let him succeed? He jumped and shouted, "In your dreams." Both sides stretched out their dragon claws at the same time. 1 gold and 1 silver, they grabbed at the dragon horn at the same time. Just as the 2 dragon claws were about to touch the dragon horn, a formless energy surged out from the dragon horn. Boom! Boom! With 2 loud sounds, Tang Zheng and the chief were sent flying by a powerful force at the same time. Bang! They slammed into the wall before stopping. But in the next second, they had already turned over and were staring at the dragon horn in shock. At this time, the Dragon King also arrived on the 18th floor. He stared at the dragon horn in surprise and exclaimed, "The horn of the dragon god." His eyes were shining, unwilling to move away from the dragon horn for even a moment. The chief said fiercely, "It's just the horn of that damned dragon god. What's there to be surprised about?" Tang Zheng retorted, "Since you look down on it so much, then don't try to steal it." "Why not? Once I fuse with the divine power of this dragon god's horn, you won't be my match at all," the chief said proudly. Although there were no fragments of the dragon god on the 18th floor, the divine power contained within this dragon god's horn was even more powerful. Naturally, they all wanted to take it for themselves. Tang Zheng curled his lips and said, "Don't boast so early. It's not that easy to fuse with this dragon horn." The chief couldn't refute. They had already tried just now, but the powerful backlash made them flinch. Tang Zheng was in no hurry to steal it. Instead, he helped the Empyrean fairy up and asked with concern, "How are you?" The Empyrean fairy bit her lip and shook her head, "I'm fine. My chi and blood were shaken just now. I'm much better now." Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief and said, "You go back first. We'll deal with the enemy first." Whoosh. The chief was unwilling to give up. Although he had already failed once, he still resolutely rushed towards the dragon horn. The Dragon King revealed a nervous expression, but Tang Zheng didn't move and curled his lips playfully. Tang Zheng had already tried it once, and he was well aware that this dragon horn was not so easy to obtain. Bang! Sure enough, with a muffled sound, the chief was sent flying back and fell to the ground in a sorry state. "Ha ha ha." Tang Zheng laughed loudly. "Do you really think that dragon horn is that easy to obtain?" The Dragon King let out a sigh of relief. The chief got up in a flustered and exasperated manner and glared fiercely at Tang Zheng before looking at the dragon horn unwillingly. What kind of restriction did this damn dragon horn set up? The chief also saw the clues and said indignantly. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "It's a restriction that you can't break." "Temph, I can't break it, but can you break this restriction?" The chief retorted sarcastically. Tang Zheng shrugged indifferently and said, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I can't break it. As long as it doesn't fall into your hands, it's a victory." "You." The chief was speechless. He was determined to get the dragon horn. If he didn't get the dragon horn, he wouldn't be able to complete it. Tang Zheng was different. As long as he kept the dragon horn, he would have one. "Why don't I give it a try?" The Dragon King said expectantly. As the Dragon King, he couldn't fuse with the dragon god fragment. If he could get the dragon horn, it would be a huge compensation for him. "You can give it a try," Tang Zheng generously said. The chief wanted to refute, but he didn't have the right or the way to do so. He could only glare fiercely at the Dragon King. The Dragon King ignored him and soared into the sky, flying towards the dragon horn. Bang! Unsurprisingly, the Dragon King was also sent flying back. He was in an even more sorry state than the chief. "Ha ha ha." The chief laughed wildly, "Even I can't do anything. Do you think that with your half-baked skills, you can take the dragon horn for yourself?" The Dragon King lowered his head in disappointment. As a result, it became a stalemate. No one could take the dragon horn for themselves. Chapter 1766. The few of them looked at each other and then looked at the dragon horn. There was nothing they could do, and no one rushed forward blindly. Everyone knew that it would be futile. Tang Zheng did not covet the dragon god's horn. As long as it did not fall into the hands of the dragon slayer's leader, everything would be fine. He gave the Dragon King a look and said, "Dragon King, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we let him slip away, there will be endless trouble in the future and it will be difficult to find him again." The Dragon King understood and already understood Tang Zheng's intention. His gaze immediately locked onto the leader. The Dragon Clan had long hated this person to the bone, especially the Dragon King. If it were not for him, the Dragon Clan would not be in such dire straits. The Dragon King's status would be higher, and there would be no need to hide like now. The Dragon King nodded without hesitation and took a stance. "Come, We have to settle the score from back then. Tang Zheng and the Dragon King formed a triangle and attacked the leader, leaving him no chance to escape. As for the staircase, it was blocked by the two of them, not giving the leader a chance to escape. Then let's settle this. Let's see if you die or I live. The leader roared and took the lead to rush out. Tang Zheng and the Dragon King met him at the same time. Immediately, an earth-shattering battle began. The Empyrean fairy retreated step by step and only stopped when she reached the wall. She looked at this scene in a daze. Smacking her lips, she muttered to herself, "The 9th stage of the Mahayana realm is really powerful. Tang Zheng and the Dragon Slayer's leader's combat power seems to be above the 9th stage of the Mahayana realm." The Empyrean fairy's insight was very unique. Tang Zheng and the leader were indeed undergoing subtle changes. At first, the leader's cultivation must have surpassed Tang Zheng's, and he was one step away from the 9th stage of the Mahayana realm. He already had an intuition that he would break through to another mysterious realm. He was no stranger to this realm. Many times, he had touched the threshold of this realm. It was as if he was only a layer away, but he could not step through the door. After fusing with the Dragon God fragment this time, this feeling was very strong. He felt that he was about to break through to that mysterious realm. He only needed a little bit of help. This bit of help naturally fell on the Dragon God's horn. Once he absorbed and fused with the endless energy contained within, he was confident that he could break through the final threshold. Tang Zheng also sensed that mysterious realm, especially as he fused with more and more Dragon God fragments. This feeling became even more intense. However, he was calmer than the leader of the Dragon Slayers. This kind of thing required luck and couldn't be rushed. The most important thing was to complete the task in front of him. In addition, as the intensity of the battle intensified, he realized that his pure yang energy was becoming more agitated, as though it was about to explode. The leader did not have such a hidden danger. Instead, the more he fought, the braver he became. The scales of victory were tilting in his favor. The Dragon King gradually felt that the pressure on him had doubled. Tang Zheng's movements had slowed down, and the power of his spells had also gradually decreased. The situation was not good. "Dragon God Envoy, what happened to you?" the Dragon King asked anxiously. Tang Zheng shook his head vigorously and said, "I can still hold on. Let's hold on. He won't feel good either." The leader was indeed not feeling good, but his life was not in danger after all. Instead, after seeing Tang Zheng's predicament, his fighting spirit was even higher. "Ha ha ha, you can't do it, right? I've already said that none of you are a match for me, but you didn't believe me. Soon, you will understand the cruel reality. In front of me, you will definitely die." The leader shouted arrogantly. No one could refute him because that was the truth. The Dragon King didn't know that Tang Zheng had a chronic illness. He was burning with anxiety. Seeing that Tang Zheng's situation did not improve, his mind was in a mess. Immediately, the Dragon King was wide open, and his attack power was sharply reduced. The leader's fiery eyes immediately found this loophole. His eyes lit up, and his figure flashed, sweeping his dragon tail over. The Dragon King hurriedly tried to block, but it was too late. He drew a parabola in the air and smashed hard on the ground. Boom! A huge hole appeared on the ground, and the Dragon King fell from it. One had to know that every level of the Langya Pavilion had a protective restriction, and normal attacks would not be able to hurt the Langya Pavilion. From the current situation, the protective restriction's power was getting weaker and weaker. Otherwise, how could the Dragon King have smashed a hole and fallen down the stairs? Without the Dragon King, Tang Zheng's pressure multiplied. How could he resist the leader alone? The leader was smug. His plan was to kill Tang Zheng and snatch the Dragon God fragment that he had fused with. After that, he would slowly take care of the Dragon God's horn. The situation was developing in the direction he wanted. Once the Dragon King disappeared, the leader moved. Like a ghost, he quickly attacked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was struggling to deal with it. Even the power of the sky-swallowing technique in his hand was reduced, and the suction force on the leader was getting weaker and weaker. "Go to hell!" The leader's angry roar rang in his ears. He was already in front of Tang Zheng, and his dragon claws and dragon tail attacked together. Boom! In the loud sound, Tang Zheng was also sent flying. As for the black hole above his head, it disappeared. Puff! Tang Zheng spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only did his face not turn pale, it was as red as fire. Ah! Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and roared. He had nowhere to vent the pure yang energy in his body. It was as if his body was about to explode. Seeing this, the leader was puzzled. He looked at him curiously and asked, "Hey, although you are injured so badly, your reaction is so strange. I can't see through it at all. Why is that?" Tang Zheng was not in the mood to answer the leader. His mind was in shock, and his breathing was rapid. The pure yang energy was boiling, as if it was about to rush out of his meridians and blood vessels and evaporate from his pores. The leader saw him like this, but he didn't hear a reply. He stared at him suspiciously and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Tang Zheng did not answer, as if he did not hear anything. The leader roared, "No matter what you are doing, I will kill you first." Whoosh! The dragon claw fiercely grabbed at him. The strong force made Tang Zheng's breathing difficult. That kind of soul-stirring power was suffocating. Ah! Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and roared. A ball of flame was spat out from his mouth. Sky fire! With a boom, the sky fire rushed towards the leader and completely enveloped him. Ah! The leader exclaimed. He felt a strong threat from the ball of flame. "What is this?" The leader roared. Of course, he knew that this was a flame, but this flame was different from what he had seen before. He hurriedly retreated, but there were too many flames. They kept coming out of Tang Zheng's mouth from afar. The Langya pavilion seemed to be turning into a sea of flames. Bang! With a muffled sound, Tang Zheng fell heavily onto the floor. The heavenly fire wrapped around him and burned him fiercely. He did not struggle at all. He was like a piece of wood, allowing the sky fire to burn him. The heaven fire burned his body from the inside to the outside, then from the outside to the inside. But his consciousness was still clear. This was completely different from before. The pure yang energy has completely erupted. I'm going to explode. This fatal problem that had troubled him for 20 years finally erupted. Please use the search engine to search for keywords. Chapter 1767. The leader scrambled out of the heavenly fire in a sorry state, emitting a burnt smell all over his body. Victory was in sight, but he didn't expect to encounter such a situation. He stared at Tang Zheng in disbelief. Hey! He was immediately attracted by Tang Zheng's situation. Tang Zheng was completely immersed in the sea of heavenly fire. The leader had tasted the heavenly fire before, so he was very clear about its power. "Ha ha ha, you're definitely going to die. Let's see how you're going to compete with me for the dragon horn." The leader was very proud, his eyes full of laughter. Only the Empyrean fairy was left on the 18th floor with the ability to fight. But how could she be a match for the leader? The leader's gaze swept past the Empyrean fairy, and he said disdainfully, "Do you still want to fight with me?" The Empyrean fairy glanced at him indifferently, but she didn't comment. She bit her lips and walked straight towards Tang Zheng. The leader was stunned, but then he laughed wildly. "Ha ha ha, you're really scared out of your wits. You're actually courting death. Fine, I won't have to do it myself." The Empyrean fairy turned a deaf ear to him. Others might not know about Tang Zheng's situation, but she knew it very well. He was exploding. His pure yang energy was like a flood that broke through a dam, completely leaking out. Tang Zheng didn't have long to live. Then the leader of the dragon slayers would win and obtain the dragon horn. The dragon race would be completely wiped out. In addition, the leader's ambition was definitely not limited to this. It was hard to say if he would attack other worlds. Perhaps, the human world would bear the brunt of his attack. What kind of disaster would that be? The Empyrean fairy didn't need to think too much to guess a thing or two. Who could save all of this? Or stop all of this? Could she? She immediately gave a negative answer. What about the Dragon King? The Dragon King couldn't even protect himself, so how could he succeed? As for his father, the Emperor of Heaven? Compared to the leader, the Emperor of Heaven was still far inferior. She was afraid that he would also be killed by the leader in the future. The Empyrean fairy's heart twitched when she thought of this. As she walked towards Tang Zheng, the flames dyed her eyes red. Her footsteps became firmer and firmer. When she walked in front of the flames, she took a deep breath and calmed down. Then, she turned to look at the leader. The leader had a smug look on his face. Without saying a word, the Empyrean fairy took a step forward and walked straight into the flames. Boom! The flames rose and quickly enveloped the Empyrean fairy. Both of them disappeared into the flames. The leader stared at the flames in a daze and suddenly felt a sense of loss. He sighed with emotion. From now on, I have no opponent in this world. He raised his head and stared at the dragon horn in the air. He said unwillingly, I don't believe that I can't subdue you. What you stole from me in the past, I will take it back 1,000 times over. Whoosh! He leaped up and charged toward the dragon horn in an aggressive manner. Stop! A dragon's roar came from the staircase. The Dragon King, covered in wounds, rushed up in an attempt to stop the leader. The leader turned to look and said with disdain, You don't know how to run and still dare to rush to your death. Then, I'll fulfill your wish. The leader stopped in mid-air and aimed his 9 dragon claws at the Dragon King. The Dragon King also waved his 9 dragon claws. Magic treasures and divine weapons also flew up and attacked the leader ferociously. You can't even withstand a single blow. The leader snorted coldly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Beams of light appeared as the 9 dragon claws attacked the Dragon King together. Boom, 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 boom. The Dragon King fell heavily on the floor. His body was bleeding profusely and he could not get up again. The Dragon King looked at the high-spirited leader with his dying breath and gritted his teeth unwillingly. The leader laughed disdainfully. You want to stop me? Wishful thinking. You traitor, you will die a horrible death. The Dragon King roared weakly. The leader laughed wildly and ignored the Dragon King. He stared at the dragon horn without blinking. Now that everyone has stopped, no one will disturb me. He swung his dragon tail and flew toward the dragon horn. The dragon horn emitted a mysterious light. When the leader used both his claws and tail to attack the dragon horn, the mysterious light immediately counterattacked. The leader did not retreat. After retreating for a distance, he charged forward fearlessly. Rumble. The Dragon King's eyes were filled with despair. The situation was hopeless and no one could stop him. He closed his eyes in despair. Was the Dragon Clan really going to be exterminated because of this? 2 drops of crystal tears fell from the Dragon King's eyes. But all of this was unavoidable and irreversible. Boom. The dragon horn was attacked again and a dazzling light burst out. All the sounds in the world disappeared. The Dragon King and the leader widened their eyes at the same time. They could not care less about the sound in their ears as they stared blankly at the dragon horn. The dragon horn shook violently and the dazzling light disappeared. The Dragon King's heart sank. He knew that the thing he did not want to see the most had happened. The leader cheered in ecstasy. His deafening voice resounded between heaven and earth. Ha ha ha, I finally succeeded. Dragon horn, you are finally mine. The leader shot out and flew in front of the dragon horn. He could not believe that he had succeeded just like that. He stretched out his dragon claws and tried to grab the dragon horn. There was no more powerful rebound, and his dragon claw had truly touched the dragon horn. Hiss. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His eyes shone brightly, and his dragon claws immediately gripped the dragon horn tightly. A mysterious power was emitted from the dragon horn. The leader's eyes became brighter and brighter like stars. This is the true power of the dragon god. It is the most powerful and important power. The energy contained in the dragon horn surpassed that of the dragon god's fragment. It was the most powerful energy of the dragon god. He did not expect that he, the traitor of the Dragon Clan, would benefit so easily. The Dragon King's heart was dead. Of course, he knew how powerful the energy in the dragon horn was. Now that the traitor had benefited, the traitor would be even more powerful. The Dragon Clan's momentum was gone. There was no way to reverse the situation. The little bit of essence, energy, and spirit of his remnant soul disappeared. He glanced at the heavenly fire that was still burning and shook his head in despair. Roar! The leader roared like rolling thunder. A ball of light overflowed from the dragon horn and wrapped around his dragon claws. Then, it completely enveloped his whole body at lightning speed. The dragon scales all over his body lit up with silver light. New silver dragon scales grew one after another. The leader's dragon scales grew more and more. They were fine and dense, like a layer of the most exquisite armor. Compared to the other dragons, his dragon scales were finer and denser. Obviously, his resistance to attacks would be stronger. The Dragon King closed his eyes and let the tears fall from his eyes. He could not bear to see this despairing scene. The leader's body was undergoing earth-shattering changes from the inside out. Ha ha ha. His laughter echoed in the Langya pavilion. Please use the search engine to search for keywords. Chapter 1768. Roar. An earth-shattering dragon roar resounded throughout the world. The leader underwent an earth-shattering change. From the inside out, from the outside to the inside, his aura became more and more powerful, becoming more and more unfathomable. The dragon's might that emanated from his bones was awe-inspiring. He was actually transforming in the direction of the dragon god. The Dragon King stared blankly at the leader. He had also noticed this change, but there was nothing he could do. A dragon slayer was about to become the dragon god. Wasn't this a great irony? This was a mockery to the dragon clan. It was a disaster for the dragon clan. Whoosh! A dazzling light burst out from the leader's body, filling every corner of Langya Pavilion, but it did not penetrate the raging flames. The Dragon King subconsciously closed his eyes. Even with his cultivation, he could not look directly at this dazzling light. His breathing seemed to have stopped. After a long time, when he opened his eyes again and looked at the leader, his heart skipped a beat. He had completely fallen into a bottomless abyss, and his body was smashed to pieces. This was because the leader's aura was completely different. It was no longer fierce and domineering. Instead, it was as calm as water, like air. If one did not pay attention, they would not have noticed it at all. Of course, the Dragon King knew very well what this meant. He smacked his lips and said intermittently, he actually became the dragon god. This was the unique aura of the dragon god. Although the Dragon King had never seen the dragon god, he had heard the elders of the clan talk about the various miracles of the dragon god from generation to generation. The Dragon King still remembered it clearly. One of the descriptions about the dragon god's aura was exactly the same as the leader's. The Dragon King did not know that his judgment was not accurate. The leader had not truly transformed into the dragon god. He had already taken half a step, but he was still one step away. The leader himself knew very well that he had not completely integrated with the dragon god's fragment. If he had integrated with Tang Jing's part of the dragon god's fragment, he would definitely have been able to truly transform into the dragon god. However, he was still wild with joy because his harvest was bountiful. He had finally broken through the barrier that he had been dreaming of for a long time. The 9th stage of the Mahayana realm was a natural moat in front of all cultivators. No one had crossed it, but many people who had cultivated to the 9th stage of the Mahayana realm had a feeling. That was, there must be a higher realm above this realm. There was no end to learning, and there was no end to cultivation. However, there were very few people who could cross this natural chasm. The leader guessed that the dragon god had crossed this natural chasm, so he had been dreaming of crossing it. This time, he finally got what he wanted. Although he hadn't completely transformed into a dragon god, his cultivation had indeed broken through and entered a very mysterious realm. Everything in front of him seemed to have quietly changed. He had a kind of confidence that he was already invincible in the world, and that no one was a match for him. He was still immersed in that mysterious realm. He smacked his lips and murmured to himself, so the Saint realm is above the Mahayana realm. He raised his palm and carefully examined it. Every meridian, blood vessel, muscle, and even every cell was vivid and lifelike under his eyes. He raised his head and looked out. Everything in the world seemed to come alive. When his eyes fell on the Dragon King, all of the Dragon King's secrets were exposed. It was as if the Dragon King was standing naked in front of him. There were no secrets at all. The Dragon King felt his gaze and subconsciously shrank into his body and curled up. He, who was already in despair, actually felt fear. A person who wasn't even afraid of death was actually afraid. From this, it could be seen how profound the leader's cultivation was and how powerful his strength was. The Dragon King shrank back and said, "What are you going to do?" "Haha, of course, I'm going to destroy the Dragon Clan. When the Dragon Clan expelled me, I swore that I would make the Dragon Clan regret it. Now, I'm finally going to fulfill my oath. I'll destroy the Dragon Clan and make you completely disappear from this world. From now on, there will be no more Dragon Clan," the leader said vehemently. The Dragon King's eyelids twitched a few times, but he was powerless to resist. Under the suppression of the leader's aura, the Dragon King couldn't even say a word to resist. He took one last look at the raging heavenly fire and closed his eyes in resignation. The end of the Dragon Clan had come. "Let's start with you, Dragon King. Go to hell," the leader roared and stretched out his claws toward the Dragon King. The silver claws immediately enveloped the Dragon King. The Dragon King couldn't move and quickly flew toward the leader. Under the illumination of the heavenly fire, he was incomparably miserable. Within the heavenly fire, the Empyrean fairy walked in resolutely. The heavenly fire quickly engulfed her. From the outside, it looked like she had turned into a flaming person and was about to be annihilated. The Empyrean fairy could clearly feel that the heavenly fire was different from the true fire. It was extremely powerful. The feeling of wanting to break through her body was like being bitten by 10,000 insects. She frowned and forced herself to endure it. Step by step, she walked toward Tang Zheng. She had already seen Tang Jing lying motionlessly on the ground. She didn't know if he was dead or alive. She knew very well that he was definitely not dead. Even if he was going to die, he wouldn't die so quickly. He could still be saved. The only glimmer of hope was on her. Tang Zheng widened his eyes. The flames covered his eyes, but he could vaguely see a person walking over. The eruption of the pure yang energy this time was completely different from before. In the past, he was in a coma, but this time, he was incomparably awake. It was precisely because of this that he was in the most pain. The heavenly fire kept burning him. This kind of pain made him grit his teeth. Could it be that before I die, I have to be tortured to death? Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. When he saw the Empyrean fairy's figure, his attention was instantly attracted. He stared at her without blinking. Although the flames were blocking his view, he had already guessed the other party's identity. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that she wanted to save him? One had to know that the Empyrean fairy had rejected him back then. He almost didn't have any hope. Moreover, he didn't want to go against the Empyrean fairy's wishes, especially when it came to such matters. The Empyrean fairy stopped in front of him and slowly squatted down. She stared at Tang Zheng without blinking. His clothes had long been burned away. His entire body was naked. Every part of his body was clearly displayed in front of her eyes. In particular, a certain part of his body was like a spear that pierced the heavens. It stood proudly and was particularly eye-catching. When the Empyrean fairy's gaze swept over him, her cheeks blushed a little. However, it wasn't obvious under the cover of the flames. The Empyrean fairy activated her skills. With the protection of her divine technique, even her clothes were undamaged. However, when she saw the naked Tang Zheng, her heart was in turmoil. Tang Zheng finally saw the Empyrean fairy clearly. He tried to speak, but found that he couldn't even open his mouth. He could only stare at her like a wooden puppet. Suddenly, his eyes widened. The blood all over his body was like a flood that had broken through a dam. This was because he saw a scene that made his blood boil. The Empyrean fairy was actually taking off her clothes in front of him. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1769. As soon as the Empyrean fairy took off her clothes, they were immediately devoured by the heavenly fire and turned into ashes. After a while, The Empyrean fairy and Tang Zheng were naked. Tang Zheng's eyes seemed to have fallen into the Empyrean fairy's body. He could not take his eyes off her. Facing his burning eyes, the Empyrean fairy's cheeks flushed. She gently reached out and touched Tang Zheng's skin with her fingers. Whoosh! The pure yang energy seemed to have found an outlet. It rushed out of his body like a flood and rushed into the Empyrean fairy's body. Ah! Although the Nine Heavens Maiden had the Nine Yin Saint body and was extremely resistant to the power of pure yang, the mighty power of pure yang was still tormenting her. She did not panic. Instead, she gritted her teeth and calmed down. Her fingers tightly grasped Tang Zheng's wrist. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sound was almost audible. It was like a flood flowing into the Empyrean fairy's body. The Empyrean fairy's cheeks became redder and redder, and her breathing became rapid. Every breath of air carried a burning sensation. It was as if her throat was about to be burned through. There was pain in her eyes, but more than that, there was incomparable determination. She resolutely pulled Tang Zheng's wrist into her arms. Bang! Tang Zheng flew up from the ground and crashed into her arms. The two of them were intimately attached to each other. It was like dry wood meeting fire. From then on, it was difficult to separate them. The Empyrean fairy hugged Tang Zheng with both hands. Her movements were very jerky, but they were unusually firm. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide. He saw everything clearly. His mind was very clear. Looking at the Empyrean fairy's clumsy and jerky movements, his heart gradually melted like an iceberg. He could not help but think of the first time he met the Empyrean fairy. It was in the ancient tomb of Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang tried to absorb the Empyrean fairy's pure yin energy. He joined forces with the Empyrean fairy. In the end, Tang Zheng was lucky enough to defeat Qin Shi Huang. That was how he saved his life and also saved the Empyrean fairy's innocence. The two of them seemed to have a telepathic connection. The same scene flashed through their minds at the same time. Although it was the same scene, the feelings were different. If it wasn't for Tang Zheng, I would have been killed by Qin Shi Huang. He did me a great favor, but he never mentioned it and never asked me to repay it. New scene after new scene played in their minds like a movie. The feelings between the two of them became deeper and deeper. Tang Zheng saw the good points of the Empyrean fairy. She repeatedly helped him regardless of her own safety. No matter how dangerous the place was, she would rush to the front line with him. What kind of spirit was this? Tang Zheng was in awe. His heartstrings were moved. Time and time again, the Empyrean fairy's position in his heart became clearer and fuller. He did not need to think about it. The Empyrean fairy's figure appeared in his mind again and again, and he could not get it out of his mind. She was like a fairy from the ninth heaven. In the past, she was unreachable and unreachable. Now that she was gradually pulled to his side, he would occasionally have charming thoughts. At first, he did not take it seriously. But later, when everyone took the initiative to ask the Empyrean fairy to dissolve the pure yang energy for him, his thoughts gradually became active. The Empyrean fairy was so perfect. Would he really have a chance to get close to her? He still did not dare to believe all of this. He also did not dare to have extravagant hopes. Even when everyone brought up this matter many times, he avoided talking about it. This was because he did not want to go against the Empyrean fairy's wishes. This time, the Empyrean fairy took the initiative to offer her body. This was completely out of his expectations. It was completely different from her previous resolute opposition. But the intimate touch that came from their bodies could not be faked. His heartbeat also sped up. Especially under the guidance of the Empyrean fairy, his heart felt like it was going to jump out of his throat. The Empyrean fairy looked at his bright eyes and felt unbearably shy. But at this moment, how could she give up? She could only try her best to dissolve the shyness in her heart and take the initiative to facilitate the good thing between the two of them. Their two bodies intertwined. Not long after, they began to move up and down. The Empyrean fairy completely took the initiative. After experiencing the initial pain, she gradually adapted. Her tightly knitted brows also gradually relaxed. The heavenly fire jumped up and down as the two of them moved. It was like rolling waves. The pure yin energy gradually took effect. It burst out from the Empyrean fairy's body and flowed through Tang Zheng's body. His limbs, bones, and extraordinary meridians were all filled with pure yin energy. The pure yang energy was nourished by the pure yin energy. It was like the land that received rain after a long drought. It greedily absorbed the pure yin energy. An endless stream of pure yin energy flowed out of the Empyrean fairy's body. But the Empyrean fairy was still fine. The 9 yin holy body was very special. It was different from other bodies. The pure yin energy that it contained was terrifying. It was impossible for her to absorb all of his pure yin energy in such a short time. In addition, as the pure yang energy entered her body, yin and yang were harmonized. Her cultivation was also increasing slowly. Both of them benefited a lot and were immersed in this wonderful state. Unknowingly, a layer of frost formed on the surface of Tang Zheng's body. Even the heavenly fire could not dissolve this layer of frost. In addition, flames jumped on the surface of the Empyrean fairy's skin. It was as if she had turned into a person of fire. The two of them had such different reactions that people were amazed. However, both of them were immersed in the wonderful state of yin and yang harmony. They did not notice this strange thing. Inside Tang Zheng's mind palace, a purple light had already filled the surroundings. His nascent soul fiercely opened its eyes as its meridians and blood vessels rapidly grew. Its skin became transparent, allowing it to see everything clearly. Yuanying's eyes gradually showed signs of life. Yuanying was really alive. Whoosh! Yuanying did a somersault. He twisted his head and rolled his eyes. He carefully looked at his own body. Suddenly, he stretched his arms and smiled contentedly. At the same time, a golden light shot out from the dragon mark on Tang Zheng's forehead and mixed with the heavenly fire. A small golden dragon suddenly flew out from the dragon mark. It swam along Tang Zheng's body and went straight to his abdomen. With a flash of light, the golden dragon disappeared into his abdomen. In the next second, the golden dragon appeared in front of Yuanying in his purple mansion. Yuanying was like a child who saw a toy. Both of them stared at the small golden dragon. He grabbed it with his small hand. The golden dragon could not escape and was directly caught in his palm. The golden dragon did not struggle. It quickly wrapped around his small body along his arm. Suddenly, the golden light and the purple light shone together. It was particularly dazzling and mysterious. Roar! Suddenly, the small golden dragon looked up to the sky and roared. With a flash of light, it drilled into Yuanying's body. The golden light came out from under Yuanying's skin and merged with the purple light. Time passed. After an unknown amount of time, the golden light disappeared. Yuanying's mouth hooked up into a mysterious smile. He shook his body and turned into a dragon. It was a purple dragon. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1770. Yuanying turned into a purple dragon. Purple chi rose into the air, looking extremely mysterious. The purple dragon did not stay in a corner. Instead, with a flash of light, it became extremely small and started to swim along Tang Zheng's meridians. Wherever it passed, Tang Zheng's body would undergo 1,000 tempering, becoming more and more indestructible. His chaotic Vajra spell had already been cultivated to the indestructible realm, and at this moment, this realm had been raised once again, reaching the true indestructible realm. From now on, if anyone could kill him, it would definitely not be through their physical body. Purple light seeped out from the surface of his skin, and even Empyrean Fairy was enveloped by this layer of purple light. The purple light actually seeped into her skin, benefiting her greatly. After an unknown period of time, the two figures within the heavenly fire stopped moving and reached the realm of oneness with the world. You have me, I have you, I have you, I have you. Vast and mighty, the pure yang energy that was even more intense than the flames flowed through Empyrean Fairy's body, and then returned to Tang Zheng's body. However, the pure yang energy was no longer agitated, but had instead become extremely docile, as warm as jade. In addition, the pure yin energy that was even colder than the 1,000-year-old ice also flowed back from Tang Zheng's body, becoming as warm as spring. It flowed through Empyrean Fairy's meridians, making her feel as if she had fallen into a hot spring. The two of them slowly opened their eyes. Just now, when they had ascended to paradise, they couldn't help but close their eyes and immerse themselves in that endless aftertaste. At this moment, after opening their eyes, there was no shyness in their eyes. Instead, there was a kind of sweetness in their hearts. In their eyes, there was only each other, and in the world, there was only each other. Tang Zheng gently pulled her into his embrace. Empyrean Fairy obediently leaned into his embrace, no longer having her usual sharpness. At this moment, she had become a woman as gentle as water. With just a glance, it was as if she would completely fall into her eyes. As their eyes met, Tang Zheng said gently, "Fu Yao, thank you." Fu Yao reached out her finger and gently placed it on his lips. She gently shook her head and said, "I have to thank you too." Tang Zheng's eyes scanned her from head to toe like a scanner. His eyes lit up, and he curled his lips into a smile as he said, "You've reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm." The 9th grade of the Mahayana realm was the realm that the Empyrean Fairy dreamed of. Even for her, it was beyond her reach. At the very least, she believed that it would be impossible for her to break through to the 9th stage of the Mahayana realm in a short time. He never thought that his dream would come true. This was a pleasant surprise. All sorts of feelings welled up in her heart. Naturally, she knew that all of this was thanks to Tang Zheng. If it weren't for her and Tang Zheng's yin and yang harmony, and the fusion of pure yang and pure yin energy, she wouldn't have had such a fortuitous encounter. One was yin and one was yang. After the fusion of the two extreme constitutions, the power that erupted was unimaginable. The Empyrean Fairy rejoiced. She was saving people, but in fact, she was also saving herself. When the two of them were one with the world, their hearts and minds were intertwined. There was no need for any words to understand each other's thoughts. They had each other in their hearts, but neither of them mentioned it. However, when their hearts and minds were intertwined, the deepest secrets in their hearts were completely revealed and could not be hidden at all. The Empyrean Fairy looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. With her current vision, she could not see through Tang Zheng anymore. She could not help but be curious about his cultivation. Her father was the Emperor of Heaven. She also knew that the Emperor of Heaven had been exploring the realm after the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm. Now that she had reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, she could vaguely sense it. There were definitely more profound realms after this. There was no end to learning, and there was no end to cultivation. Therefore, when she saw Tang Zheng's current situation, she could not help but want to know his realm. Tang Zheng's lips curled into an unfathomable smile as he said, "You are already at the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, so you must have guessed that there are more profound realms after this." The Empyrean Fairy nodded as if she did not fully understand. Her eyes lit up as if she had guessed something. She stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze as if she was waiting for the answer in her heart. Tang Zheng said without hesitation, "There is indeed a new realm after the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, and that is the Saint realm." Saint realm? The Empyrean Fairy's voice rose a lot as she stared at Tang Zheng and asked, "Then, have you reached the Saint realm?" Tang Zheng smiled faintly and nodded, "Yes. I have completely solved the crisis of my 9-yang saint body. It turns out that the power of pure yang is my greatest asset. Fortune and misfortune depend on each other, and misfortune and fortune lie within each other. The 9-yang saint body caused me to face the danger of exploding, but at the same time, once I solved this crisis, the 9-yang saint body's constitution greatly benefited me. My cultivation underwent a tremendous change and I broke through to the saint realm in one fell swoop. Congratulations." The Empyrean Fairy was truly happy from the bottom of her heart. "This is all thanks to you," Tang Zheng sincerely said. The Empyrean Fairy reminded, "Let's not just thank each other. The situation outside is even more dangerous, so let's deal with the crisis first." "That's true." Tang Zheng waved his hand and two sets of clothes fell on each other. In the blink of an eye, the two were fully dressed and walked out of the heavenly flames. The heavenly flames could no longer harm the two as if they had become a part of them. This was especially true for the Empyrean Fairy, who could actually control the heavenly flames. She waved her hand and a ball of heavenly flames flew into her palm. It kept jumping around, but it could not harm her at all. Boom! The heavenly flames suddenly jumped and let out an explosive sound. Then, they turned into sparks and shot out in all directions. Then, the two figures appeared once again. Their auras had undergone a tremendous change as they looked forward at the same time. The tall figure of the dragon slayers immediately entered their sights. He had once again transformed into his human form and stood proudly. His silver robes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was mysterious and unfathomable. There was a person lying at his feet, the Dragon King. The Dragon King had already returned to his true dragon form. The originally golden dragon scales were completely dim and the Dragon King was on the verge of death. His eyes were half open and half closed, as if they would close at any moment and never open again. Suddenly, the Dragon King heard a huge commotion. He opened his eyes with great difficulty and looked in the direction of the sound. "Ah!" he cried out in alarm. He stared at the scene in front of him as if he had seen a ghost. He could not believe it at all. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy. When these two familiar figures appeared in front of him, he thought that he was seeing things on his deathbed. However, someone would not think that he was seeing things. The Dragon Slayer's leader's eyes were wide open as he stared at the two of them fiercely. He would never have dreamed that the two of them could survive. The most important thing was that their auras had undergone a tremendous change. He could tell at a glance that the Empyrean Fairy was already a 9th-stage Mahayana realm cultivator. How did she do all this in such a short time? The Dragon Slayer's leader could not figure it out. However, it was self-evident what this meant. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1771. The leader's gaze shifted between Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy. He could only see through the Empyrean Fairy's cultivation, but not Tang Zheng's. What did this mean? He was well aware of the answer. That meant that Tang Zheng's cultivation was no less than his. He had also reached the Saint Realm. This was the only reason why he couldn't see through Tang Zheng's cultivation. How was this possible? The leader's heart trembled. He had only reached the Saint Realm because he had fused with the Dragon Horn's energy. Tang Zheng's life had been hanging by a thread before. How could he have broken through in such a short time? Could it be that he had also had a fortuitous encounter? The leader couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he scratched his head. He naturally didn't know that Tang Zheng was a Skywalker. Once he had harmonized the pure yang energy in his body and walked back from the gates of hell, there would be an earth-shattering change. The leader's expression had become very serious. He stared at Tang Zheng without moving his gaze. Tang Zheng's gaze was also fixed on the leader. His heart skipped a beat. He could also see that the leader had reached the Saint Realm. This meant that he had fused with the Dragon Horn's energy. Tang Zheng looked up. The Dragon Horn was no longer there. This was enough to explain everything. The leader was the first to break the silence. He stared at Tang Zheng and asked, "How did you do it?" Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Only you are allowed to reach the Saint Realm. Others are not allowed to reach the Saint Realm." As soon as he said this, the Empyrean Fairy was shocked. She looked at the leader in disbelief. No wonder she couldn't see through his cultivation. It turned out that he had also reached the Saint Realm. Her gaze shifted back and forth between Tang Zheng and the leader. She was wondering who was more powerful between the two. The leader was speechless. He coldly snorted and said, "You brat, there is definitely something strange about you. I didn't misjudge you. You really are a big problem for me. You are even more annoying than that Dragon King." Hearing this, Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy looked at the Dragon King. The Dragon King was barely breathing, but his eyes were shining when he looked at Tang Zheng. The Empyrean Fairy rushed over and helped the Dragon King up. She comforted him, "Don't worry, everything will be fine. Tang Zheng will seek justice for the dragon race and avenge you." "Thank you," the Dragon King said weakly, his eyes full of gratitude. At first, he had no choice but to compromise with Tang Zheng, but now, he was sincerely grateful to Tang Zheng from the bottom of his heart. If it weren't for Tang Zheng, the Dragon Clan would have been exterminated. Although there was still the risk of their clan being exterminated, there was at least a glimmer of hope. Appointing him as the dragon god envoy was the wisest decision of my life, the Dragon King thought to himself. Tang Zheng and the leader were already at daggers drawn. An invisible aura was brewing between them, and even the Empyrean fairy couldn't get close to them. That kind of heartfelt fear made people shudder. So what if you've reached the Saint Realm? It's still a dead end. I'll get rid of you first, and then I'll exterminate the Dragon Clan, the leader said through gritted teeth. Tang Zheng retorted, the Dragon Slayers will disappear from this world completely from now on. Since they couldn't see eye to eye, the two had nothing else to say. Whoosh, whoosh. Both of them turned into two rays of light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom. With a deafening sound, a shockwave rushed in all directions. With a few clangs, a few big holes appeared around the Langya Pavilion, like windows. Wind rushed in from all directions, and then was swept away by the shockwave. The Langya Pavilion was on the verge of collapse, and creaked non-stop. The two of them stopped at the same time. They were not far away from each other, and they stared at each other, the sparks of hatred intersecting in mid-air. Go to hell! The leader roared and pointed his finger, and a ray of silver light like a waterfall appeared in the blink of an eye. Tang Zheng swung the hidden sword, which exploded with greater power in the hands of a Saint Realm master. With a sword hum, the sky was filled with sword light. Neither the heavenly fairy sword technique nor the Taiji dual forms sword technique could compare. Tang Zheng's sword technique had been completely sublimated. There was no fixed move, and it was completely based on Tang Zheng's thoughts. No move was better than a move. This was a very mysterious state, a state that ordinary people couldn't imagine at all. But when Tang Zheng broke through to the Saint Realm, all of this was self-taught, as if he was born with it. Swoosh, swoosh. The hidden sword flew out and met the waterfall-like silver light. Boom. After the two lights collided, the top of the Langya Pavilion was turned into ruins in an instant, dancing in the sky. Whoosh. A gust of wind blew over their heads. They looked up and saw the grey sky above the 9 heavens. Both the Dragon King and the Fairy of the 9 heavens were horrified. The previous intense battle had not shaken the Langya Pavilion. Now, the top of the Langya Pavilion had been torn off as soon as the two of them started fighting. This was enough to show the strength of the two, and the power of the Saint Realm. Before they could react, the battle between Tang Zheng and the leader became more and more intense. Creak, creak, creak. The floor shook violently. Boom. Another loud sound was heard, and the floor collapsed. The Dragon King and the Empyrean Fairy fell down at the same time, and hit the floor below. Suddenly, a bright light attracted the Empyrean Fairy's attention. She took a closer look and found that it was a very sharp light. A divine artifact. Her heart skipped a beat, and she remembered the introduction of the Langya Pavilion. Every level of the inverted Langya Pavilion not only had the divine dragon fragments, but also the divine weapons. Earlier, they were only here for the divine dragon fragments. Moreover, these divine weapons were not very useful to Tang Zheng and the leader, so their attention was naturally not on the divine weapons. However, the Empyrean Fairy was attracted by the divine weapons at this moment. The Dragon King saw through the Empyrean Fairy's thoughts and said, "Hurry up and get it. Don't let it fall into the hands of the Dragon Slayers." The Empyrean Fairy's body flashed, and she had already grabbed the divine weapon in her hand. Before she could examine the divine weapon in her hand carefully, she felt the ground shaking violently. Creak. Huge cracks appeared on the ground, and with a loud bang, she fell straight down. The Dragon King had lost his ability to fight back, and he was in an even more embarrassing and dangerous situation. The Empyrean Fairy knew that the Langya Pavilion could not be saved. The battle between the two was too powerful, so she reached out and grabbed the Dragon King, and a dazzling light erupted from her body to protect the two of them. Let's go. She leaped and rushed downstairs, and wherever she went, she quickly kept the divine weapons she saw. Soon, she reached the ground floor and met the Dragon Slayers and the other Dragon Clan members. Both parties were fighting fiercely. However, the Langya Pavilion was on the verge of collapse, and both parties were very uneasy and panicked. Hurry up and get out. The Langya pavilion is about to collapse, the Empyrean fairy shouted. The Dragon Clan members were shocked, especially when they saw the dying Dragon King, and they were even more at a loss. When the Dragon Slayers saw the Empyrean fairy and the Dragon King in her hand, their eyes lit up, and they rushed up fiercely. If they could kill the Dragon King, it would be a great contribution, and it was a very significant thing for the Dragon Slayers. In addition, if they could devour the Dragon Soul after killing the Dragon King, their strength would increase qualitatively. The Dragon King was like a piece of meat that attracted the Dragon Slayers, causing them to attack fiercely. When the other Dragon Clan members saw this, they shouted loudly and tried to stop all of this. However, distant water could not put out a nearby fire. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1772. A large group of dragon slayers charged toward the Dragon King crazily. The other dragons were too far away to help. How could the Empyrean fairy leave them in the lurch? She threw out the divine weapons in her hands, and a dazzling light illuminated the Langya pavilion. Her 9th grade Mahayana cultivation was already higher than these dragon slayers. With the divine weapons in her hands, she was like a tiger that had grown wings. The dragon slayers did not know her true cultivation level and did not take it to heart. Hence, the Dharma treasures of the few dragon slayers who were charging at the front were the first to shatter. Then, they were hit by the Dharma treasures and died on the spot. Everything happened too quickly. It was dazzling. Before they could see clearly, a group of dragon slayers had already fallen. Ah! Cries of alarm sounded. The dragon slayers at the back finally realized that the situation had changed. They stopped in their tracks or retreated. However, the Empyrean fairy was not a pushover either. She immediately activated her Dharma treasures and attacked fiercely. Bang! 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 Another large group of dragon slayers fell to the ground. In front of a 9th grade Mahayana cultivator, ordinary dragon slayers could not withstand a single blow. The dragons were stunned by the Empyrean fairy's strength. They had all seen the Empyrean fairy before. She was not so powerful before. Why did she change so much in the blink of an eye? The dragons looked at each other, not understanding the mystery. The Empyrean fairy had the upper hand, but she did not intend to take advantage of the situation and destroy the dragon slayers. The Langya pavilion was on the verge of collapse. It was urgent to leave this place. Hence, she stopped attacking and shouted at the dragons, "All dragons, leave the Langya pavilion, now." The dragons looked at the Dragon King subconsciously. After all, the Dragon King was the master of the clan. Although the Fairy of the 9 Heavens had displayed amazing strength, her prestige and status were still not comparable to the Dragon King's. The Dragon King saw through his people's thoughts. He moved his lips and used almost all his strength to say, "Retreat." No one dared to resist the order. They rushed to the exit like a tide. The dragon slayers tried to stop her, but the 9 Heavens mystic fairy alone was enough to stop all of them. The dragon slayers couldn't even get close to the other dragons. Fortunately, the space around them was not large. Otherwise, the Empyrean fairy would not be able to handle the situation alone. Wave after wave of dragon slayers tried to rush towards the Empyrean fairy, but they all failed in the end. Thus, the dragon slayer had an idea. He simply changed his direction and rushed straight to Langya's first floor. Previously, the Dragon Clan had blocked their way forward. Now that there was no obstruction, they could rush in without any hindrance. The Empyrean fairy didn't stop him. Instead, she smiled contemptuously. The dragon slayer was seeking his own death, so she didn't have to do anything. The dragons quickly retreated, leaving only one behind. The golden dragon. The Empyrean fairy recognized it immediately and asked, "Why aren't you retreating?" "I want to wait for Master." "Master hasn't come yet." The golden dragon said worriedly. The Empyrean fairy was touched. She persuaded, "Don't worry, Tang Zheng has his ways. Let's leave this place first." The golden dragon was very stubborn. He shook his head firmly and said, "No, I want to wait for Master." "Golden dragon, why are you so stubborn?" The Empyrean fairy was helpless. Seeing that she couldn't persuade the golden dragon, She simply stopped the golden dragon with a point of her finger. "Let's go." The Empyrean fairy held the Dragon King in her left hand and the golden dragon in her right hand. She rushed towards the entrance as if she was flying. Some of the dragon slayers were unwilling to give up and took the opportunity to attack. However, their attacks did not hit the Empyrean fairy. The divine weapons completely blocked their attacks. The Empyrean fairy was safe and sound, but the dragon slayers were counterattacked and died on the spot. Of course, there were also smart dragon slayers. Seeing that the dragons were retreating in such a hurry, they quickly followed behind the Empyrean fairy and retreated. The dragons retreated from the Langya pavilion. When they looked up, only half of the Langya pavilion was left. The top was completely destroyed. Waves of terrifying auras could be felt from the ruins. It was frightening. The dragons only realized how dangerous it was just now. It was as if they had just taken a trip to the gates of hell. They looked at the Empyrean fairy with eyes full of gratitude. The other dragon slayers who followed them out were also stunned when they saw this scene. They still had lingering fears. They immediately came back to their senses and shouted at the dragon slayers who were left in the Langya pavilion, "The Langya pavilion is about to collapse. Come out quickly." However, the other dragon slayers could not hear them at all. They continued to move towards the other floors. When they finally reached the floor where Tang Zheng and the leader of the dragon slayers were, waves of shock waves rushed out from between them before they could even shout. The dragon slayers were the first to bear the brunt of the shock waves. They turned into air and disappeared with the wind. Boom, boom, boom. Loud noises were heard from the Langya pavilion. The Langya pavilion was tilting. "Retreat quickly. The Langya pavilion is about to collapse." The Empyrean fairy shouted and hurriedly retreated into the distance. The other dragons and the dragon slayers retreated together in tacit understanding. They actually forgot to kill each other and stared at the Langya pavilion without blinking. The Langya pavilion had a special meaning to the dragons and the dragon slayers. The ancestors of the dragons were buried in it, and these were the dragon souls that the dragon slayers had been coveting for a long time. Once these dragon souls were fused, the dragon slayers would advance by leaps and bounds. Now, all of this would turn into ruins with the collapse of the Langya pavilion. There would be nothing left. The dragons had lost the dragon souls of their ancestors, and the dragon slayers had also lost the opportunity to advance. Both parties were heartbroken and went through 1,000 twists and turns. The Langya pavilion was tilting more and more. The dragon slayers inside also realized that something was wrong and tried to escape. However, it was all too late. Boom. The earth trembled as the Langya pavilion hit the ground hard. Broken walls and fences flew in all directions as if they were magic weapons. Everyone hurriedly blocked and dodged, but they could not move their eyes away. They stared at the Langya pavilion without blinking. The Langya pavilion turned into ruins. Smoke and dust rose into the sky like a sandstorm, sweeping in all directions. Everyone hurriedly activated their magic weapons to protect themselves. The smoke and dust blocked their vision. There were no other sounds in the world. Only the sound of the Langya pavilion falling to the ground lingered in the air. Everyone widened their eyes. They seemed to have seen some clues, but in the end, they did not find anything. Suddenly, a voice broke all of this. Then, like a violent storm, the sounds in the world became noisy again. Everyone was frightened. Their hearts almost jumped out of their throats because they had already realized what was going on. The battle between Tang Zheng and the leader did not stop. The flames of war spread from the Langya pavilion to the ground. The series of sounds were the sounds of the battle between the two sides. The Langya pavilion was affected by the battle between the two and turned into ruins. Then why didn't they retreat as far away as possible to avoid being implicated and suffering an unexpected calamity? Therefore, this time, without the Empyrean fairy's reminder, whether it was the dragons or the dragon slayers, they all retreated like the receding tide. They only wanted to be as far away from the battlefield as possible. To read the latest novel without error, please visit Chapter 1773. The smoke and dust were torn apart by the shockwaves, unable to continue. Everyone finally saw two figures, their speed was extremely fast, and there were even treasures flying. The dazzling light was especially dazzling. Tang Zheng and the leader looked at each other from afar. The hidden mysterious sword could not do anything to the leader. He was wearing a thick armor, shining with a silver light. The hidden mysterious sword hit the armor a few times, but only created sparks, unable to hurt the leader at all. This is formed from his dragon scales. The hidden mysterious sword cannot break through this layer of armor. Tang Zheng recognized the reality. His heart was shaken. The hidden mysterious sword was a divine weapon. However, this armor was formed from the dragon scales of the leader's true body. The divine power it contained was not inferior to the hidden mysterious sword. Tang Zheng had an idea. He raised the hidden mysterious sword. A purple light shot out from the tip of his finger, landing on the hidden mysterious sword. The leader did not take it seriously. He jokingly said, "Although your sword is powerful, it is still futile. It cannot break through my defense." Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and said, "Really?" As soon as his voice fell, the hidden mysterious sword flew out, just like before, but there was an additional purple light on the blade. The leader proudly raised his hands crossed. The dense armor covered his arms, perfectly covering every inch of his skin. Seeing the hidden mysterious sword fly in front of him, the purple light suddenly increased. A purple dragon appeared on the hidden mysterious sword, wrapping around the blade. In an instant, the hidden mysterious sword turned purple, and the purple dragon at the tip of the sword was especially eye-catching. The leader finally realized that something was wrong. He quickly retreated and shouted, "What is this?" He had never seen the purple dragon before, but he felt a strong threat, instinctively realizing that something was wrong. Tang Zheng was happy. He did not think that a sudden idea would have such a good effect. This purple dragon was not simple. It was formed from his yuanying. When he broke through to the saint realm, the yuanying could leave his body. This was the divine ability he had always dreamed of, and now it was finally realized. He naturally wanted to test its power. The effect was obvious. When the leader saw the purple dragon, he actually retreated. This was enough to explain everything. "It's too late to retreat now," Tang Zheng shouted, and the hidden mystic sword's speed increased. Bang! The hidden mystic sword struck the armor. Silver light and purple light burst out, but the silver light was immediately suppressed. Puff! A crack appeared on the armor, and the purple light quickly seeped in. The crack rapidly expanded as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The purple dragon flew out from the hidden profound sword and coiled around the leader's arm. Half of his arm was bathed in purple light. "Ah!" The leader screamed in pain. His face was filled with shock, but he couldn't break free from the purple dragon. Roar! With a dragon's roar, the leader transformed into a silver dragon. His arms became huge dragon claws, but the purple dragon grew in the wind and coiled around one of his dragon claws. The dragon claw had already turned from silver to light purple, and it seemed like it could be destroyed at any moment. The leader roared again and again, and the other dragon claws grabbed at the purple dragon. How could Tang Zheng just sit there and wait for death? His figure flashed, and a black hole appeared in his palm. He immediately enveloped the leader and roared, "Devour the heavens!" Whoosh! The aura of heaven and earth quickly flew toward the black hole. The others couldn't stand still and flew toward the black hole. The Empyrean fairy hurriedly took out a few divine weapons and built a protective wall in front of the dragons to prevent them from being sucked into the black hole. The other dragon slayers weren't so lucky. Some of the weaker dragon slayers screamed and flew into the black hole, disappearing. The dragon slayers were terrified, and they already had thoughts of retreating. They glanced at the leader, and many of them turned around and ran. This seemed to be a demonstration, and the other dragon slayers followed suit and ran away. "Don't let them escape." The Dragon King was dying, but he used all his strength to shout, "Stop them. My people, the time for revenge is here, kill." The dragons had a protective wall, and they roared with red eyes. The dragons had been hunted for so many years, and now they could finally hold their heads high. They were going to pay back the blood debt that the dragon slayers owed. "Kill." Shouts shook the sky, and the dragons and dragon slayers fought fiercely again. However, there was a huge difference compared to before. The dragon slayers' momentum was gone, and the dragon's momentum was like a rainbow, firmly holding the upper hand. The leader didn't have time to be distracted. Although he saw his subordinates being surrounded, he couldn't help at all. The purple dragon had already put him in a terrible situation. He secretly blamed himself for being too careless. If he hadn't been so careless and allowed the purple dragon to get close to him and entangle him, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. Tang Zheng was also very clear about this point. He was just taking advantage of the leader's carelessness to catch him off guard, and it actually worked. How could he miss such a great opportunity? The sky-swallowing technique firmly locked onto the leader and tore at his body, so his dragon claws couldn't attack the purple dragon at all. The leader had to divert most of his attention to resist the suction of the sky-swallowing technique. He was very clear that once he was sucked into the black hole, it meant that his life was in danger. As for the purple dragon, it wouldn't take his life. He was very clear about which was more important, so he naturally had to take advantage of the situation. Tang Zheng didn't expect this attack to be fatal in the first place. Seeing the leader in a hurry to resist the sky-swallowing technique, his goal was achieved. Break! With a loud roar, the leader's dragon claw was completely enveloped by the purple light and turned purple. Bang! With a crisp sound, the dragon claw broke and left the leader's body. The purple dragon was like a victorious general, waving its little claws proudly and flying directly back into Tang Zheng's body. Ah! The leader's screams and roars followed one after another, resounding throughout the entire space. It was deafening, and many dragons and dragon slayers were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Their internal organs were almost shattered by this sound. All of them looked at the leader in shock. When they saw his broken dragon claw, they were even more shocked. The leader's body burst with silver light, and his body actually expanded by a lot. The dragon horn on his head suddenly appeared with silver light, emerging from the top of his head bit by bit, becoming longer. Swoosh! A silver light shot out from the dragon horn. The leader spat out a mouthful of blood, which merged with the silver light and rushed toward the black hole as fast as lightning. Boom! The black hole trembled violently and swayed, rippling in circles. It collapsed and disappeared into the sky. Tang Zheng's head trembled. This attack had an inexplicable divine power. It must have been caused by that mouthful of blood. This was the first time the sky-swallowing technique had been defeated. However, Tang Zheng was not worried. Instead, he was a little happy. The leader was already in a mess. In order to save himself, he actually used this kind of magical power that hurt himself. That mouthful of blood was the leader's heart's blood, and it contained great divine power. After losing this part of his heart's blood, the leader had internal injuries, and his combat strength was naturally reduced. The leader was lucky to have broken the sky-swallowing technique. He looked at Tang Zheng from afar, and there was already fear in the depths of his eyes. He already knew that he was in a disadvantageous position. I can't delay any longer. This brat is too strange. Could that purple dragon be his doppelganger? Although I've reached the sage realm, I'm still a little bit away from having a doppelganger. He's one step ahead of me. This already explains the problem. The leader was very clear about this principle. Where there is life, there is hope. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1774. The leader was already thinking of retreating. Seeing that the black hole had disappeared, he quickly fled into the distance. Where do you think you're going? Tang Zheng shouted, and with a shake of his body, he also transformed into a dragon. Purple qi rose from his body, and he actually also turned into a purple dragon. Tang Zheng's body was not inferior to the leader's. With a sweep of his tail, the air shook violently. Roar! Tang Zheng roared into the sky and turned into a purple light, instantly blocking the leader's path. The leader stopped in a panic and shouted, "Why are you so powerful?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Didn't you say you were invincible and wanted to destroy the dragon race? Today, let's see if the dragon race will be destroyed or the dragon slayers will die." The leader's eyes flickered. He gritted his huge dragon teeth and a silver light erupted from his body. "I'll fight you to the death." Whoosh! The leader charged at Tang Zheng. He already understood that there was no way out. He could only fight with his back against the wall. Perhaps he would still have a chance at survival. Whoosh! The dragon claw pounced, silver light filling the sky. Tang Zheng also waved his dragon claw. Purple light soared. The purple and silver light clashed with each other. It was incomparably brilliant. The others could only see these two lights. Even their figures disappeared. Their eyes were completely filled with purple and silver light. Unknowingly, a subtle change occurred. The silver light gradually dissipated, and the purple light gained the upper hand. Everyone's hearts tightened as they all thought of the reason. Their breathing also quickened. The dragon race was excited, while the dragon slayers were terrified. Empyrean Fairy also couldn't help but clench her fists. Her eyes lit up as she muttered, "Tang Zheng, good job." Everyone thought that after the leader fused with the dragon god fragment, his strength would increase greatly. Tang Zheng would probably be powerless. Who would have thought that the Nine Suns sacred experience would have such a miraculous effect? Once he broke through that critical juncture, he was like a volcano erupting. His strength shot up like a rocket. If I had known this would happen, I would have done this sooner, Empyrean Fairy thought. However, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. So many people tried to matchmake her and Tang Zheng, but she naturally rejected such actions. As a result, she and Tang Zheng had always been aloof and had not broken through the final step. In fact, she didn't hate Tang Zheng. In fact, she had long been attracted by Tang Zheng's charisma, but she had never noticed it. What she hated was other people trying to influence her decisions. She was the one who decided her own life and would not listen to other people's arrangements. At this moment, her body and mind belonged to Tang Zheng. Seeing how powerful Tang Zheng was, her heart was filled with pride and happiness. All of this was thanks to her. The sounds of battle gradually became muffled, and the leader's roar also became weaker. The purple light firmly held the upper hand. The figures of both sides appeared once again. Tang Zheng's momentum was like a rainbow. The leader was like the light of the setting sun, unable to withstand a single blow. Tang Zheng was also shocked by the strength of his doppelganger. At this moment, he and his doppelganger had merged into one. Their combined strength was the reason why he could suppress the leader in all aspects. The leader was unwilling to give up. He once again made a last-ditch struggle, trying to escape this calamity. Tang Zheng was in control of the entire situation. Whenever the leader made a move, Tang Zheng had already figured out his intentions. He smiled disdainfully and waved his dragon claw in the air. A ball of purple light soared into the sky. Finally, this ball of purple light stopped in mid-air and began to rapidly change. In an instant, it turned into a big hole. It was a big purple hole, different from the previous black hole. Tang Zheng smiled knowingly. The sky-devouring technique had been upgraded. There was no doubt that its power would be different from before. As expected, the purple hole's suction force was very terrifying. Although it was suspended in mid-air, its target was only the leader. The others did not feel the suction force at all. This was the upgraded sky-devouring technique. It could attack accurately and not indiscriminately from all directions. The leader had previously experienced the power of the sky-devouring technique. After seeing the purple hole, his mind was shaken and he tried to escape. However, the suction force was firmly locked onto him. He could not escape at all. Ah! He roared at the sky. He had already experienced the difference between the purple hole and could not break free at all. Whoosh! He involuntarily flew toward the purple hole. He kept waving his dragon claws and swinging his dragon tail. He let out dragon roars from his mouth. However, all of this was in vain. He was still approaching the purple hole bit by bit. Tang Zheng shook his body and transformed into a human. He quickly caught up with the leader and struck out with his palm. It was light as a feather, as if it was not a threat at all. His palm gently imprinted on the leader's body. Immediately, the leader's huge body trembled. The silver light all over his body flowed toward Tang Zheng's palm, faster and faster. The leader shouted in horror, "Tang Zheng, what are you doing?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You took something that doesn't belong to you. I'm taking it back now. You're absorbing my power." The leader finally understood. His eyes were full of horror, and he struggled even more fiercely. Don't waste your energy. You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. It's useless to struggle. Tang Zheng said and quickly activated the sky-swallowing technique. A purple light appeared on his palm. The leader's power flowed like a waterfall, quickly flowing into Tang Zheng's body. After the power was refined, it was completely absorbed by Tang Zheng. Not long after, the leader's body dimmed. Even his eyes dimmed. Seeing this, the dragons understood that the leader's momentum was gone. They all cheered. The dragon god envoy is mighty. The dragon god envoy is mighty. The cheers shook the sky. The dragon slayers were completely desperate. If they did not escape now, when would they? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. One by one, the dragon slayers tried to escape like stray dogs. The Empyrean fairy shouted, "Stop them!" Boom boom boom. The dragon army swept over like a tide. The dragon slayers had lost their morale. How could they be a match for the dragons? Their last remaining strength disappeared in an instant. Seeing this scene, the leader's heart was like dead ashes. He used all his strength and shouted, "I can't accept this." His voice stopped abruptly because his dragon god fragment was completely absorbed by Tang Zheng. He widened his eyes and disappeared into the purple hole. The purple hole quickly disappeared. Tang Zheng's body shone with a purple light, like a purple sun, emitting a dazzling purple light in midair. The dragons raised their heads and looked at the sky. They stared blankly at this scene with their mouths wide open. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. The Dragon King was dying. At this moment, he seemed to have recovered a bit of energy. He stood up straight and stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He smacked his lips and muttered to himself, "Dragon God." Tang Zheng was completely immersed in the wonderful experience. Although the leader's power was mighty like a flood, the most important thing to him was the Dragon God fragment. At this moment, he had completely gathered the Dragon God fragment and was undergoing a qualitative transformation. Once the dragons gathered the Dragon God fragment and completely integrated it, they would evolve into a new Dragon God. Now, Tang Zheng had finally done it. Chapter 1775. There was only a sliver of life left in the leader's eyes as he stared at Tang Zheng with a dumbstruck expression. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. However, from the shape of his mouth, he could tell that it was the Dragon God. The leader flew to the entrance of the cave, and a purple light flashed before engulfing the leader before disappearing right before everyone's eyes. However, everyone's attention was focused on Tang Zheng at this moment as his transformation was the most eye-catching. All of the dragon tribe cultivators held their breaths as they stared intently at Tang Zheng, unwilling to miss any details of his transformation. Pieces of purple scales appeared on Tang Zheng's skin. Not long later, he was completely wrapped in a layer of these scales, like a purple armor. A purple dragon horn emerged from the top of his head and quickly grew. Dragon horn! All of the dragon tribe cultivators exclaimed as they pointed from afar. A series of mysterious veined patterns appeared on the dragon horn as it exuded a purple light, and it was particularly eye-catching. Tang Zheng also discovered his own transformation, and he was ecstatic. As the person involved, he knew very well that he was transforming into the Dragon God. He was completely focused on this transformation process, and it was a complete rebirth process. His divine sense extended outwards, touching every corner of this space. It was as if he could control everything with a single thought. His entire body exuded a terrifying dragon might, and all of the dragon tribe cultivators were struck by the urge to prostrate themselves before him. Even the Dragon King was no exception. All of a sudden, a dragon tribe cultivator knelt before Tang Zheng and prostrated himself before calling out, "Dragon God." It was as if a prelude had been kicked off, and all of the dragon tribe cultivators prostrated themselves before Tang Zheng as earth-shattering cries erupted one after another. Dragon God! Tang Zheng floated in the air, looking down at the dragon clan below his feet. His mind was in turmoil. From now on, he was the Dragon God, an existence even higher than the Dragon King, the highest existence in the dragon clan. His transformation had already concluded, and his purple armor and dragon horn appeared even more majestic. Among everyone present, only the Empyrean fairy was still standing. All of the other dragon tribe cultivators, including the Dragon King, were kneeling on the ground. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up as she smiled at him. Her face was brimming with happiness. Tang Zheng turned his head and glanced at the messy Langya pavilion. With a thought, he gently tapped the ruins with his finger. With a whoosh, the ruins flew up and rapidly condensed. The Langya pavilion was being rebuilt at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hearing the commotion, the dragons raised their heads in fear and were immediately attracted by this scene. All of them were dumbfounded. One by one, the dragon souls flew up from the ruins and gathered in mid-air. Every time a floor was rebuilt, a dragon soul would fly into it. It didn't take long for the 18-story Langya pavilion to be rebuilt. It stood in front of the dragon clan, looking exceptionally shocking. Just a moment ago, it was still in ruins, but in the blink of an eye, it was rebuilt. This uncanny workmanship shocked everyone. So this is the power of the dragon god, they exclaimed inwardly. Tang Zheng was also filled with emotion. This is the power of the dragon god. Looking at the Langya pavilion that was as good as new, he felt comforted. In this way, the remaining dragon souls could rest in peace here. They no longer had to worry about being tortured by the dragon slayers. From now on, the dragon clan was completely freed from the shadow of the dragon slayers. The sharp sword hanging above the dragon clan's head finally no longer existed. From today onwards, the dragon clan will truly stand up. Dragons, listen up, stand up. Tang Zheng roared with an earth-shattering roar. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dragon clan's blood was boiling. They stood up one after another, straightened their backs, held their heads high, and looked at Tang Zheng with blazing eyes. It was as if there were thousands of words stuck in their throats, but they couldn't say anything. It was as if there was a ball of fire burning in their hearts. The dragon clan's essence, energy, and spirit had undergone earth-shattering changes. Tang Zheng was very satisfied and nodded with gratification. Dragon King! Dragon King! Suddenly, a cry of surprise broke all of this. The Dragon King fell straight down. He was severely injured. It was already commendable that he could hold on until this moment. There was no regret in the Dragon King's heart. This was the goal that he had strived for. It was also his dream, and now it had finally come true. Tang Zheng hurried to the front of the Dragon King and saw that he was on the verge of death, as if he only had one last breath left. However, he still looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes and said weakly, "Thank you. I'll leave the Dragon Clan to you from now on." The Dragon King was very clear about his situation. He knew that he didn't have long to live. Tang Zheng pointed his finger and a purple light flew from his fingertip into the Dragon King's chest and said, "Your mission is not over yet. From now on, you still have to lead the Dragon Clan to become stronger day by day and restore the glory of the past." As the purple light entered the Dragon King's body, his body trembled. A strong vitality was restored from his 8 extraordinary meridians. His eyes gradually revealed vitality. The Dragon King moved his muscles and stood up nimbly. He looked left and right, and looked at his own body in disbelief. "Am I not going to die soon?" "You won't die yet." Tang Zheng laughed. The Dragon King stared straight at Tang Zheng. He no longer had any thoughts of fighting and said sincerely, "Dragon God, thank you." He was about to kneel down and kowtow to Tang Zheng, but was stopped by Tang Zheng and said, "You are the leader of the Dragon Clan. You have to set a good example for your people." Leader of the Dragon Clan? The Dragon King was stunned for a moment. He looked at Tang Zheng in confusion and said, "You are the Dragon God. The leader of the Dragon Clan is you. Under your leadership, the Dragon Clan will definitely rise quickly." Tang Zheng had never thought of being the leader of the Dragon Clan. He had too many things to do, so how could he stay in the dragon domain? He shook his head and said, "I am only a member of the Dragon Clan." "Dragon King, you are the leader of the Dragon Clan." Seeing that Tang Zheng's tone was sincere and didn't seem to be fake, the Dragon King was filled with emotions. He used to think that Tang Zheng might be plotting for his position as the Dragon King. It seemed that he was measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty person. Tang Zheng already had an absolute advantage, but he still took the position of the Dragon Clan's leader. This showed that Tang Zheng never had that thought. The Dragon King couldn't help but feel ashamed and lowered his head in shame. Tang Zheng didn't care about his thoughts and glanced at the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy smiled and walked towards him. Under everyone's gaze, Tang Zheng held her hand and said, "The Dragon Clan's crisis has been resolved. I will leave now. Goodbye, Master." The Golden Dragon had already guessed his thoughts and immediately rushed out to shout. Tang Zheng nodded at the Golden Dragon and said, "You have already returned to the Dragon Clan. Stay in the Dragon Domain and cultivate well. This is your home. Master, I." The Golden Dragon had thousands of words to say, but he couldn't say anything. Tang Zheng waved his hand and a purple light burst out from his body. Even the Empyrean fairy was wrapped up by it. His figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Watching the two leave, the Dragon Clan was speechless for a long time. They were still completely immersed in their shock. After a long time, the Dragon King came back to his senses. He looked at the Golden Dragon and then looked at the other Dragon Clan members. He said firmly, "We must not let down the Dragon God's painstaking efforts. From now on, every Dragon Clan member must cultivate diligently and remember the Dragon God's kindness." "Yes, Dragon King," the earth-shattering reply echoed in the surroundings. Chapter 1776. In the human world, a group of people had been worried about Tang Zheng for many days. They did not know whether his trip to the Dragon Domain would be good or bad. This was especially true for Tang Zheng's pure yang energy. This was the main point of everyone's worries. To them, this period of time was like a year. Catcher. A bolt of lightning streaked across the night sky. Outside, there was already a violent storm. Another bolt of lightning pierced through the heavens and earth, tearing the sky apart. It was as if the earth was going to be torn apart as well. No one saw that above the 9 heavens, accompanied by that bolt of lightning, 2 figures appeared out of thin air in the human world. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy returned from the Dragon Domain. They did not care about the storm and flew straight home. Regardless of the wind and rain, they all avoided these 2 people and flew to the sides. Fang Sheshe and Yi Dingdang squeezed onto the same bed, listening to the sound of thunder, wind, and rain outside the window. Fang Sheshe worriedly said, "I don't know how he is." Yi Dingdang pouted and hugged Fang Sheshe's arm. She mischievously asked, "Do you miss him?" Fang Sheshe stared at Yi Dingdang without a trace of fear. She asked back, "Could it be that you don't miss him?" Yi Dingdang coldly snorted and said, "This heartless guy left alone with the Empyrean fairy. I don't miss him." Fang Sheshe mischievously said, "Then who was the one calling his name in her dreams in the middle of the night?" Yi Dingdang's cheeks reddened. She coquettishly said, "You're not allowed to say that. Otherwise, I won't accompany you." Fang Sheshe laughed involuntarily and worriedly said, "All right, then let's change the topic. Do you think he will succeed? Will the Empyrean fairy save him?" Yi Dingdang's expression turned cold. She became silent and said, "If it were any other woman, they definitely wouldn't be able to resist his charm. But this woman is the Empyrean fairy. She's not an ordinary woman. He might not succeed." Fang Sheshe shook her head and said, "I don't think so." Although the Empyrean fairy rejected him so straightforwardly, Tang Zheng's charm is not small. Humph, we're the only ones who fell for his trick. The Empyrean fairy might not fall for it, Yi Dingdang mumbled. "If you had to start all over again, would you still be willing to fall for this trick?" Fang Sheshe asked. Yi Dingdang was silent, unable to reply. After a long time, she resentfully nodded. "Alas, even if it's a bottomless abyss, as long as he's there, I'll still jump in without hesitation." Fang Sheshe smiled and said, "Yes, that's his charm. It's fascinating." Catcher. Another bolt of lightning flashed past, drowning out their voices. Suddenly, the 2 of them found that there was another figure in the room. They were startled and immediately tensed up, ready to attack. It should be known that this place was heavily guarded. Not only was there a formation, but there were also wizard tribe warriors patrolling. Almost no one could break in quietly. Who is it? The two of them had already jumped out of bed and were staring at the newcomer covetously. Hey, it's only been a while since we last met. Don't you recognize me? Tang Zheng's voice rang out and he asked playfully. He was already in the Saint Realm, so the defense here was useless to him. Therefore, he and the Empyrean fairy had quietly entered. In the middle of the night, he didn't want to make it too grand and disturb everyone's rest. His hearing was excellent. Nothing could escape his ears. Therefore, he heard the private conversation between Fang Shisha and Yi Dingdang. Therefore, after he temporarily separated from the Empyrean fairy, he sneaked into their room without anyone noticing. Hearing Tang Zheng's familiar voice, Fang Shisha and Yi Dingdang were stunned at the same time. Their expressions became interesting. First, they turned pale with fright, then they became wild with joy. Yi Dingdang was like a cheerful elf. With a whoosh, she rushed out and went straight for Tang Zheng. She didn't give him a chance to react and directly hung on to Tang Zheng like a sloth. Tang Zheng hugged her tightly. Yi Dingdang greedily sniffed Tang Zheng's scent and said in a daze, "You're finally back." Fang Shisha was relatively reserved. However, at this moment, her heart was also in turmoil. She stared straight at Tang Zheng and walked towards him step by step. The two looked at each other. Their eyes were full of affection. Tang Zheng reached out his hand and firmly held Fang Shisha's hand. Fang Shisha's heart trembled as she obediently leaned on him. Suddenly, one person hung on to Tang Zheng's body while the other leaned on him. His hands were not empty, but his heart was incomparably warm, as if the ice and snow had melted. Fang Shisha held Tang Zheng's hand tightly. She listened to the strong heartbeat in his chest and whispered, "It's good that you're okay. As long as you're safe, the sky will be clear." This was Fang Shisha's most simple wish. Now that it had finally come true, she was both glad and happy. Yi Dingdang's hand touched Tang Zheng's head a few times, as if to determine if there were any changes. She stared at him and asked, "How did you escape this calamity? Where's your pure yang energy? Did it erupt?" Tang Zheng walked step by step to the bedside and gently placed Yi Dingdang on the bed. He sat on the bed and hugged Fang Shisha and Yi Dingdang in his arms. He let them sit on his lap and said, "My pure yang energy has erupted, but I have already overcome this greatest danger." "Ah, pure yang energy has erupted." Fang Shisha cried out in alarm. Yi Dingdang also opened her eyes wide and impatiently asked, "Then how did you overcome this danger?" Fang Shisha was also very interested as she stared at him with a burning gaze. Tang Zheng did not hide anything and said truthfully, "Fu Yarrow saved me." She disregarded the danger and was willing to give up her life to save me. It really was her. Fang Shisha and Yi Dingdang looked at each other. They were still guessing if the Empyrean fairy would compromise, but now they had the answer. The high and mighty Empyrean fairy actually compromised and walked down the altar to save Tang Zheng's life. "Hurry up and tell us in detail. What happened between the two of you, especially the details. We want to hear it. Don't even think about hiding it." Yi Dingdang's heart was burning with the flames of gossip as she said unyieldingly. Fang Shisha also opened her eyes wide and did not object. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly and told them everything that happened in the dragon's domain. Immediately, Fang Shisha and Yi Dingdang were deeply attracted. They followed Tang Zheng's actions as if they had experienced it themselves. Especially when Tang Zheng's pure yang energy erupted, the two of them held their breaths. Although they already knew the outcome, they were still unable to calm down. After Tang Zheng finished speaking, two pairs of eyes sized up Tang Zheng as if they wanted to see through him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Tang Zheng asked. "You have already reached the Sage Realm. What kind of realm is the Sage Realm?" Fang Shisha asked. Yi Dingdang asked at the same time, "How did you feel when you had sex with the Empyrean fairy?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes as black lines appeared on his forehead. Only the eccentric Yi Dingdang could ask such a question. He reached out and knocked her head, saying, "What are you thinking about all day?" Fang Shisha's face turned red, saying, "Dingdang, how can you ask this?" Yi Dingdang shrugged, saying, "I'm just curious." She hugged Tang Zheng's arm and used all her strength to rub it against her chest. She softly begged, "Tell me, how did it feel?" To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1777. Tang Jing speechlessly looked at the spirited Yi Dingdang and felt a headache coming on. Yi Dingdang egged on Fang Shisha and said, "Shisha, do you want to hear it too? Don't deny it, we are all sisters." "How could I not know this?" Fang Shisha shyly lowered her head, not daring to look at her. Tang Zheng was at his wit's end. He rolled his eyes and said with a naughty smile, "Do you want to know what it feels like? Then you should experience it yourself. That way the feeling will be more profound." After saying this, his hands started to wander around. Yi Dingdang cried out in alarm as if she had been electrocuted. But how could she escape from Tang Zheng's evil clutches? He grabbed her and his big hand had already entered her clothes. Fang Shisha did not think that Tang Zheng would be so bold. With a whoosh, she jumped down from Tang Zheng's lap and ran towards the door like a frightened deer. "I want to go back and rest." "Isn't this your own room?" Yi Dingdang resisted the trembling in her heart and shouted. Fang Shisha turned a deaf ear and ran out with a whoosh. "You don't care about loyalty. Are you still sisters?" Yi Dingdang bitterly said. Tang Zheng laughed. "Who told you to get to the bottom of things? Now I'm going to punish you." After saying this, Tang Zheng pressed Yi Dingdang onto the bed. Yi Dingdang's delicate moans echoed with the sound of the rain outside the window, creating a beautiful symphony. In the morning, the air was fresh and many people woke up early. Fang Shisha tiptoed to the door of her room and listened attentively to the movements inside. Mu Hongyang saw this and curiously asked, "Shisha, what are you doing?" Fang Shisha had a guilty conscience. She patted her chest and said, "No, nothing. This is your room. What's there to eavesdrop on?" Mu Hongyang laughed involuntarily. Nana popped out from behind Mu Hongyang and tilted her head. "Sister Shisha must have done something bad, right?" Fang Shisha blushed and said, "Nana, you dare to wrong me. See how I'll deal with you." She threw herself at Nana. Nana giggled and hid behind Mu Hongyang, calling out, "Ha ha ha, Mama save me, Mama save me." Creak. The door opened, interrupting this scene. Fang Shisha turned her head mechanically, as if she was under a spell. Several pairs of eyes stared at the door as Tang Zheng walked out. "Ah, Tang Zheng, brother." Mu Hongyang and Nana cried out at the same time, looking at him in disbelief. Tang Zheng casually waved his hand and said, "Good morning." Mu Hongyang's eyes turned red. Ignoring the others present, she quickly threw herself into Tang Zheng's embrace. These days, she couldn't sleep at night because she was worried about Tang Zheng's safety. She didn't expect that he would suddenly appear in front of her. This huge surprise made her give up her modesty and throw herself into Tang Zheng's embrace. Nana was slower by a beat. Looking at her mother in Tang Zheng's embrace, she pouted and said, "Mama, why are you so fast? You stole my spot." Tang Zheng tightly hugged Mu Hongyang. His heart melted as he could clearly feel her burning emotions. Gently patting her back, Tang Zheng gently said, "Sister Mu, are you okay?" Mu Hongyang nodded, "I'm fine. How are you?" Her hands searched Tang Zheng's body, afraid that he would have an accident and lose an arm or a leg. "He's fine." Yi Dingdang's voice sounded from behind Tang Zheng. Mu Hongyang looked over and saw Yi Dingdang. Suddenly, she realized why Fang Shisha was eavesdropping at the door. It turned out that she already knew that Tang Zheng was back. Moreover, he must have been with Yi Dingdang last night. Thinking of this, Mu Hongyang bitterly glared at Tang Zheng. How could Tang Zheng not know what she was thinking? He hurriedly said, "I came back too late last night. I was afraid of disturbing everyone, so I didn't say anything." Mu Hongyang was magnanimous and naturally wouldn't care about such petty things. She gently said, "It's good that you're back. Your pure yang energy." His pure yang energy was completely dissolved. Yi Dingdang rushed to say, he hugged the beauty back and was so happy that he almost forgot about home. "Ah!" The Empyrean fairy agreed. Mu Hongyang was overjoyed, but she suddenly stopped and stared into the distance. The Empyrean fairy also walked out of the room and looked over with an indifferent expression. Without needing Tang Zheng to answer, Mu Hongyang already knew the answer. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy had already made a good thing happen, which was why he could stand in front of everyone safe and sound. Mu Hongyang sincerely thanked the Empyrean fairy and walked towards her, saying, "Thank you for saving him." The Empyrean fairy's expression was indifferent as she said, "I didn't save him for anyone else. But I still want to thank you. It's not just me, everyone in this room wants to thank you." Mu Hongyang said. The Empyrean fairy didn't answer and instead looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng picked up Nana and said, "We're all family. Don't thank me. Where are the others? Wake them up for breakfast. Other than Qingmai, the others aren't at home." Wu and Li Xiaotian went to Dianan to preside over the overall situation. Ling is still busy filming. Mu Hongyang introduced. While speaking, Liu Qingmai also walked out of the room and muttered to herself, "It's so lively so early in the morning. What happened?" Suddenly, as if someone had cast a spell on her, she froze in place and stared blankly at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng put down Nana and opened his arms to Liu Qingmai, saying, "Sister Mai, you're the last to get up. Be careful not to become a big lazy worm." Liu Qingmei's pretty face flushed red and said, "Why are you still so glib?" Tang Zheng laughed loudly. Ignoring the blazing eyes of the others, he directly walked over and hugged Liu Qingmei. Liu Qingmei's whole body was startled. She wanted to break free from his embrace, but she was reluctant to part with him and snuggled in his arms. The others looked at Tang Zheng's bold actions and their eyes were slightly strange. Only the Empyrean fairy understood his actions. After he reached the Saint Realm, his heart had undergone earth-shaking changes. He didn't care about other people's gazes. He only wanted his heart to be clear and follow his heart. Moreover, there was almost no one in this world who could point fingers at him. He silently swore all of this. The others gradually understood and their eyes became excited. They didn't want to secretly get along with Tang Zheng. He chose to be open and aboveboard. This was a great encouragement to them. "Well, let's call the rest of the family together. Everyone will definitely want to know what happened to me. Let's eat breakfast and talk about my matters in the dragon field." The news of Tang Zheng's return made the family completely lively. It was as if it was the new year. Countless people cheered and gathered together. It was very lively. Tang Zheng looked at these familiar faces, as well as those feelings that came from the bottom of his heart. His mood fluctuated. He had persevered to the end in the dragon domain, and these people were his strongest backing, the source of his strength. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.